They say school field trips are the highlights of childhood. An escape from dusty classrooms, a break from math quizzes, a chance to roam outside and pretend, if only for a day, that the world belonged to us. But memory lies, and so does nostalgia. Because sometimes the world bites back. What I'm about to share isn't just another spooky story. These are things etched into my marrow, the kind of stories that rot quietly in the back of your skull until a certain smell, a certain sound brings them clawing up again. The first story happened in 1999 when I was 10. Our school decided to take us to a place called Whistler's Hollow, a patch of preserved land on the far edge of our county. The permission slips promised nature learning. The whispers in town promised something else. They called it the hollow that eats. The school bus always had its own smell, a cocktail of sun-baked vinyl, rusting metal, and the faint aftertaste of sweaty children. 30 of us packed inside, shouting, laughing, pressing our foreheads against grimy windows as the farmland thinned and the woods grew thicker. "Stay in your seats," Ms. Keller barked from the front. She had the patience of a prison guard, the type of teacher who thought sternness was the cure to everything. Her red hair was always tied too tight, her eyes sharp behind cat-eye glasses. She didn't scare us, at least not in the way she thought she did. The road narrowed to gravel, crunching under the bus tires. A faded wooden sign appeared. Whistler's Hollow, County Nature Preserve. It leaned slightly, the paint peeling, as though even the sign was trying to leave. When we spilled out of the bus, the air felt wrong, heavy, too quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves that didn't match the stillness of the trees. Waiting for us was a park ranger in a faded green uniform. His name tag read Harlan. He was tall, thin, with a face like dried leather and eyes too dark for daylight. "Stay on the path," he said. Not a greeting, not a suggestion, a warning. Of course, we didn't listen. Kids never do. The trail swallowed us whole. The woods were denser than they should have been, each tree pressed too close to its neighbor, branches weaving together like black stitches across the sky. Even though it was nearly noon, the canopy filtered the sun into a sickly green-tinted glow. Birdsong was scarce. Every now and then, a distant call, but abrupt, like it had been cut short. And then, I saw it. A tree, older than the rest, with a knot shaped like an eye. And God help me, I swear it blinked. "Bet you won't touch it," whispered Jason Miller, the class troublemaker. Freckles, torn sneakers, a permanent smirk that dared the world to smack it off his face. I wanted to ignore him, but 10-year-old pride is a powerful thing, so I walked up to the tree. The knot stared at me, wood grain twisting into the suggestion of an iris, a pupil. I pressed my hand against it. The bark felt soft, not like wood, like skin. Something shifted beneath my palm, a pulse. I yanked my hand back, and the tree seemed to exhale, a sigh that rustled the leaves though no wind stirred. Jason laughed. Scaredy cat. But he didn't touch the tree either. "Stay together." Ms. Keller's voice sliced through the air. She was snapping at Tommy and Rachel, who were chasing each other just off the trail. "Do you want ticks or worse?" Her voice trembled on that last word. Worse. It wasn't like her to tremble. The trail opened into a clearing, Whistler's Hollow. It was beautiful in the way rot can be beautiful, wildflowers growing over broken stones, a shallow creek threading through mossy logs, sunlight dappled like shattered glass. But at the center stood a circle of stones, weathered, jagged, unnervingly arranged, like teeth. "An old settler's fire ring," Ranger Harlan said, too quickly, too rehearsed. His gaze flickered to the stones, then away. "Don't touch." But we were kids. Touching was inevitable. While Ms. Keller unpacked sandwiches, Jason dared Tommy to stand in the center of the stone circle. Tommy did, laughing, arms outstretched like he was king of the world. That's when the whisper came. It wasn't loud, just the faint hiss of syllables carried by the breeze. Not English, not anything we knew, but every single kid froze, even Jason. Tommy's smile faltered. "Did you hear?" Then his voice cut off, strangled in his throat. He staggered forward, tripped out of the circle, and gasped like he'd been underwater. Ms. Keller ran to him, furious. "What were you thinking?" But her voice was shaking too. Lunch was uneasy. The peanut butter sandwiches tasted dry. The juice boxes were sour. Even the laughter felt forced, like everyone was waiting for something to break. And then we realized Jason was gone. At first, Ms. Keller thought he'd gone to the creek, then to the bus, then to the bathrooms at the entrance, but he wasn't anywhere. "Stay here," she ordered, and stalked off with Ranger Harlan. Minutes ticked into an hour, the shadows lengthened, and the laughter stopped, because the hollow was quiet, too quiet. And in that silence, the whisper came back. We never saw Jason again, at least not the way we remembered him. When Miss Keller and Harlan returned, their faces were pale, their eyes avoiding ours. "He went back to the bus," Miss Keller said. "He'll be waiting when we return." But when we got to the bus, he wasn't there, and no one ever mentioned him again. Not the teachers, not the school, not even his parents. It was like Jason Miller had been erased. But we remembered, and so did the hollow. That was just the beginning. Whistler's Hollow kept a piece of all of us that day. Some of us forgot. Some of us buried it deep. But me? I can still feel that tree knot blinking. I can still hear the whisper curling in the dark. And if I close my eyes, I can still see Jason's face, half hidden in the trees, smiling a smile that wasn't his anymore. You'd think a missing kid would mean panic, sirens, phone calls, teachers running in frantic circles. But there was none of that. The bus ride back was silent, except for the groan of the old engine. Ms. Keller sat stiffly at the front, her knuckles white on the seat rail. "Where's Jason?" whispered Rachel beside me. "He went home early," Ms. Keller snapped without turning. It was a lie. We all knew it. And somehow none of us dared to argue. The next morning, Jason's desk was gone. Not empty, gone. The row of desks in the back corner had shifted like it had always been that way. No space left behind, no evidence he'd ever existed. When Rachel raised her hand to ask, Ms. Keller froze. Her lips twitched like she wanted to scream, but instead she forced a smile so thin it might have cracked her teeth. "Who's Jason?" she said, and the class went quiet. Some kids nodded, dazed like they'd forgotten overnight. But not me. Not Rachel. Not Tommy. We remembered. And that was worse. That week, the nightmares began. The first night I dreamed of the tree knot. It blinked open, revealing not wood, but a wet red eye that stared straight into me. The second night, I dreamed of Jason. He stood at the edge of the woods, smiling that too wide smile, whispering words I couldn't understand. By the third night, the whispers followed me into waking hours, faint, hissing, always curling from the corners of rooms where shadows clung longest. I stopped sleeping. Rachel cornered me at recess. "You remember him too," she said, eyes wide, fists clenched. I nodded. "They want us to forget, but we can't." She pulled something from her pocket, a crumpled drawing, Jason's face scratched in pencil. But his eyes were hollow circles, empty, bleeding lines down the paper. "I keep drawing him, every night, like my hand won't stop until I do." Her voice cracked. "He's still out there." A week later, Miss Keller kept me after class. Her face was pale, her lipstick smudged, her eyes rimmed with sleepless red. "You need to stop," she whispered. "Stop talking about him, stop thinking about him." Her hands shook as she gripped my shoulders. "The hollow doesn't let go. It notices when you remember, and it always comes back to collect." Then she shoved me toward the door, forcing a smile as another student peeked in. But her hands left bruises. It wasn't the last time we went back. Field trips were scheduled like clockwork every spring, no matter how much parents grumbled, no matter how many kids whispered excuses. We always went back. When the bus pulled up the next year, my stomach twisted into knots. The sign was the same, leaning and peeling. Ranger Harlan was the same, unchanged, as if he hadn't aged a day. And the whisper greeted us the moment we stepped off the bus. That year it was Tommy. He wandered too close to the creek, chasing a frog. We heard the splash, then the silence. By the time Miss Keller reached the bank, the water was still. No ripples, no bubbles, no Tommy. And the next day, his desk was gone. No one spoke his name. No one but me and Rachel. 3 years, 3 trips. Every time, a kid vanished. Every time, the world bent to erase them. By 7th grade, Rachel and I had a list. Names, dates, the ones who disappeared. Jason, Tommy, Lily, Marcus. Each time, Ranger Harlan's warning echoed in our ears. Stay on the path. But it wasn't about the path, it was about the hollow. The hollow chose. By the time I was 15, I couldn't take it anymore. I biked out there on my own one summer evening. The sun was sinking, painting the trees blood red. The trail was overgrown, yet somehow familiar, like it had been waiting for me. At the clearing, the circle of stones remained, weathered, sharp, teeth in the ground. And Jason stood there, not 10 anymore, taller, thinner. His freckles were gone, his skin pale and stretched. His eyes were pits of shadow. "You came back," he whispered. And though his lips didn't move, I heard it clear as day. "You can't keep us," I said, my voice breaking. "You can't erase us." The trees groaned, bending inward, their branches knitting together until the sky was gone. Jason tilted his head. "The hollow eats, that's what it does. It eats and it remembers." "Then why are you here?" I asked. His smile widened. "Because it's still hungry." And then the whisper rose, thousands of voices hissing at once. The air turned heavy, pressing down on my lungs until I couldn't breathe. I ran. I didn't look back. I never told anyone about that night. Rachel stopped coming to school the next year. Her parents said they moved away. But her name disappeared too, her desk, her photos in the yearbook, like she'd been swallowed whole. By graduation, half the kids from our grade were gone, and no one remembered them but me. It's been 20 years. I still hear the whispers when the night is quiet. I still see Jason's hollow eyes watching me from the trees at the edge of town. And every spring when the buses roll out, I feel the pull. The hollow hasn't forgotten, it never does. And I know someday soon it will come for me. A year after Rachel moved, I ran into Ms. Keller at the grocery store. She looked ruined. Her once proud hair was stringy, her makeup smeared, her hands shaking as she shoved cans into a basket. When her eyes landed on me, something broke. "You still remember, don't you?" she whispered. I froze. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You have to stop. For God's sake, stop remembering." "Why?" I asked. Her lips trembled. "Because that's how it finds you." And then she bolted down the aisle, abandoning her cart. She didn't come back to school the next year. Rumor was she drove her car into the river, but her name was erased too, like she'd never lived at all. The hollow isn't just a place, it's a hunger. Once you've been there, it clings to you. Like burrs in your hair, like ticks on your skin. It waits. And as I got older, I could feel it pulling. At night, dreams dragged me back to that stone circle. During the day, the tree knots seemed to blink at me from street corners, from the shadows of buildings, from cracks in the pavement. The hollow wasn't just in the woods anymore, it was in me. 10 years later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "Do you still remember?" Beneath the words, a map. Whistler's Hollow. I almost burned it. Almost. But curiosity has teeth. When I got there, she was waiting. Rachel, not gone, not erased, not yet. Her hair was longer, darker. Her eyes were haunted, ringed with sleepless shadows. But it was her. "You got the letter too," she said. I nodded. She looked over her shoulder at the woods. "It's coming again, it doesn't stop." We went back into the hollow that night. Adults now, but trembling like children. The trail hadn't changed. The trees pressed close, branches knitting tighter, the same sickly green glow. At the clearing, the stones waited, and so did the whispers. They rose like steam, curling around us, words that weren't words. 1,000 voices speaking all at once. In the center of the circle, the ground stirred, and Jason climbed out. He was older now, like time had passed in the hollow too. His face was stretched, pale, freckleless. His eyes were black pits. "You came back," he said, though his lips barely moved. Rachel clutched my hand. "Jason, it's us. Don't you remember?" He tilted his head, smiling. I remember everything. The hollow remembers everything. And then he stepped forward. Where his feet touched the grass, the earth rotted black. The whispers grew louder, pressing against my skull until it felt like my bones would crack. Rachel dropped to her knees, clutching her head, screaming. Jason leaned close, his breath cold. It's always hungry. It always wants more. Then take me, I said. I don't know why. Maybe to save Rachel. Maybe because I was tired of running. Jason's smile widened. Not yet. It wants you to remember longer. The more you remember, the sweeter you taste. And then he vanished. Just gone. The clearing fell silent. We stumbled out of the woods just before dawn, pale and shaking. Rachel lit a cigarette with trembling hands. It won't stop, I nodded. Next year another bus will come. Another kid will vanish and no one will remember but us. She exhaled smoke, her eyes glassy. Unless we end it. End it how? I asked. Her gaze flicked back to the trees. We burn it. 2 weeks later we tried. Gasoline, matches, desperation. We doused the trees along the trail, the roots, the stone circle. Flames roared, lighting the night sky. For a moment I thought it was working. Branches cracked, bark split, smoke curled high. Then the fire bent inward, like the flames were being swallowed. The hollow ate it. And when the smoke cleared, the trees stood unburned, the stones unblackened, as though nothing had happened. The next morning, Rachel was gone. No note, no trace, no forwarding address. Her apartment emptied overnight, neighbors swearing she'd never lived there. Even her parents denied having a daughter. But I remember. I always remember. I left that county years ago, but the hollow followed me. Sometimes I catch glimpses, a row of trees where there shouldn't be any, a circle of stones in the cracks of a sidewalk, a knot in the wood paneling of my apartment, shaped like an eye. And the whispers, always the whispers. They curl out of vents. They breathe beneath doors. They hiss just behind my ears when I try to sleep. The hollow isn't a place anymore. It's everywhere. And I know it's not done. It wants me. It wants me to be the next Jason, the next Rachel, the next name erased. But I won't go quietly. I'll write it down. I'll record it. I'll tell you. Because maybe if enough people remember, it can't erase us all. Maybe that's the only way to starve it. Or maybe that's just what it wants. So that's the first story. The first field trip that went wrong. Whistler's Hollow. The hollow that eats. Don't go there. Don't even think about it. And if you do, God help you if you remember. They say every childhood has its milestones. First steps, first words, first day of school. And if you grew up in the Midwest like me, first field trip to the big city. For us, that meant a charter bus ride 2 hours east, to a place with paved sidewalks that didn't buckle with tree roots and stoplights that actually worked. I was in 7th grade, somewhere between thinking I was too old for cartoons and too young for responsibility. Our English teacher, Mrs. Rankin, had gotten the bright idea to haul us all into the city to see a play. Macbeth, she said. Shakespeare, important culture. The kind of thing we small-town kids would never get unless someone spoon-fed it to us. My mom had signed the permission slip with her usual distracted scrawl. She worked night shifts at the hospital and barely had time to sleep, let alone argue over whether I should spend a school day watching men in tights shout about daggers. So, on a crisp October morning, I boarded the bus with a lunch sack, a second-hand jacket, and that fluttery, unplaceable nervousness that always comes before something new. The bus smelled of vinyl and diesel, the way they all did. Kids shouted, swapped snacks, carved initials into the fogged windows. I sat by myself, forehead pressed against the cold glass, watching the highway unspool. I didn't know then, how could I, that this trip would leave a scar deeper than anything Shakespeare ever wrote about. The theater itself sat like a relic in the middle of downtown. An old vaudeville house turned historic landmark. Red brick, soot-stained with age, its marquee bulbs half burned out. The kind of place that looked glamorous from a distance and a little sickly up close. We filed off the bus and craned our necks at the stone gargoyles clinging to the roof. Their faces twisted into sneers, eyes hollow and black. Creepy, muttered Jason. the boy who always smelled faintly of bubble gum and trouble. Inside it was worse. The lobby reeked of dust and lemon cleaner, like someone had tried and failed to scrub out decades of cigarette smoke. Velvet curtains hung heavy and damp. The ceiling plaster was cracked in webs, little white veins crawling outward. But the teachers pushed us along, chirping about history and architecture. We shuffled into the auditorium, which yawned around us like a cavern. Rows upon rows of seats, their upholstery faded to the color of dried blood. The stage loomed, dark and empty, framed by tattered drapes. I found my seat in the middle, next to a quiet girl named Leah. She wore her hair in tight braids and kept a notebook balanced on her knees, scribbling sketches of everything she saw. She didn't look up when the house lights dimmed. The play began. Actors strutted and shouted, their voices booming through the half-working speakers. At first I tried to follow, but the language slipped past me like water. Soon I stopped listening and let my eyes wander. That was when I saw him. At the very back of the theater, in the balcony that was supposedly closed to the public, a man stood watching us. Not the play, us. He was tall, shoulders hunched, wearing a dark coat that looked too heavy for indoors. His face was pale, drained of color, but his mouth, Christ. His mouth curved into a grin that never wavered. I blinked, looked again. He didn't move. "Do you see that?" I whispered to Leah, nudging her notebook. She glanced up, followed my eyes, but by the time she looked, the balcony was empty. "See what?" she asked, brows knitted. "Nothing," I muttered, sinking back. But my skin prickled, and the hairs on my arms refused to lie flat. The first act dragged on. Witches cackled. Daggers floated. The audience of restless kids shifted in their squeaky seats. I tried to lose myself in the noise, but my gaze kept tugging toward the balcony. Empty, then not, because the man was back. He stood a row closer now, leaning against the railing. His grin had widened, and though the lights should have hidden us from his vantage, I knew his eyes were locked on mine. My stomach twisted. I pressed myself into the seat, willing him to vanish. This time I didn't tell Leah. She was still sketching, lost in her own world. Maybe that was better. The play ended its act with a clash of swords and a shriek of betrayal. The house lights rose and chatter filled the space. Teachers herded us toward the lobby for intermission snacks. I lingered, glancing back. The balcony was empty again. Maybe he'd just been an usher. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks in the dark. That's what I told myself. Kids need lies like that. They're softer than the truth. During intermission, I stuck close to Leah. She bought a pack of licorice from the concession stand and broke it in half to share. "You okay?" she asked, noticing how tightly I gripped mine. "Fine," I lied. But my gaze kept darting to the staircases, the shadowed hallways leading deeper into the theater. Something about this place breathed wrong, like the walls held secrets that wanted out. The second act began. We returned to our seats, sugar buzzing on our tongues. This time I promised myself I wouldn't look back. I would ignore the balcony. I would focus on the play, and I did, for a while, until the whisper started. It came soft, so soft, I thought it was just the old speakers hissing. A rustle like fabric dragged across a microphone. But then words took shape. "Behind you." I jerked my head, but Leah was focused forward, chewing licorice. The kids around us were restless but silent. "Behind you, Terrian." Hearing your own name in a whisper when no one should know it, that does something to you, freezes the marrow. I twisted in my seat, and there he was, not in the balcony now, but 3 rows behind me. The man in the coat, his grin wide enough to split his face. No one else seemed to notice him. His lips didn't move, but the whisper slithered into my ear all the same. "Come closer." I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but my body was stone. The stage blurred, voices drowned beneath the rush of blood in my ears. The man leaned forward, eyes like holes, grin stretching. Closer. Then, just as suddenly, he was gone. I don't remember the rest of the play. One moment the whisper filled me, the next the house lights blazed and teachers were clapping, telling us to gather our things. Leah tugged my sleeve. "Come on." I followed, dazed. as we filed back into the lobby. My knees wobbled. My hands were slick with sweat. Outside, the afternoon sun should have felt warm, safe, but the shadows clung to me like cobwebs. I couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still watching. On the bus ride home, I sat pressed against the window, eyes darting to every reflection. Once I swore I saw him in the glass, seated 2 rows behind me, but when I turned, the seat was empty. By the time we pulled into the school lot, my nerves were shredded raw. And that was only the beginning, because the theater wasn't done with me, not by a long shot. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed, covers pulled to my chin, staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every car passing on the road outside painted a smear of light across my wall that looked too much like a figure. I told myself it was just imagination. That's what teachers always said when kids swore they'd seen something. Imagination, a trick of the mind. But my imagination had never whispered my name before. When sleep finally came, it was poisoned. I dreamed I was back in the theater, only the seats were empty, every row stripped bare. The stage curtains swayed, though no air moved. And in the balcony, the man waited, grinning, always grinning. He lifted his hand and pointed at me. I woke with my throat raw like I'd been screaming for hours. School the next day was a blur. Mrs. Rankin gushed about Shakespeare, about metaphors and tragedy, but her words slid past me. My stomach twisted each time I blinked, each time I caught a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. Leah sat across the room, doodling in her notebook as usual. Once when I glanced up, I thought I saw her sketching something strange, a figure in a dark coat, standing behind rows of seats. When class ended, I tried to catch her. "Leah," I said, stopping her at the door. "What did you think of yesterday, the play?" She shrugged. "It was fine, kinda long." "Did you see anything?" My voice cracked. "Like anyone who shouldn't have been there." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" I hesitated. If she hadn't seen him, what would telling her do except make me sound crazy? "Never mind," I muttered. She gave me a strange look, then slipped away. But as she turned, I glimpsed her notebook page, and my stomach dropped. The man's grin stared back at me, pencil-shaded and exact. That night, the dream came again. Only this time I wasn't in the audience. I was on stage. The curtain rose to silence. Rows of seats stretched before me, each filled not with people but with shadows, faceless and hunched. Somewhere in the back, one figure stood taller, grinning. I tried to speak, to ask what he wanted, but my voice came out warped, like an echo trapped in a tunnel. The shadows leaned forward, hungry. The man pointed again. Only this time, his arms stretched far, far too long, bending and creaking like wood. His finger reached down until it was inches from my chest. I woke gasping, heart hammering, and for a split second I swore I felt a weight pressing on me, as though someone had been leaning over my bed. By the third night I was half mad with exhaustion. My mum noticed the dark circles under my eyes, but she didn't have time for questions. She just muttered about me staying up late with comic books and left for another shift. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that it would fade, that the man was just a leftover image burned into my brain from the theater. But then the whispers started outside my room. It was a Friday night. I lay awake, clutching my pillow, when I heard it. "Terrian." The voice slithered down the hallway. Not my mom's voice, not anyone I knew. "Come closer." I sat up, trembling. The door was cracked open. Beyond it, the hallway lay in darkness. "Mom?" I whispered, though I knew she wasn't home. The voice chuckled, low, hungry. "We're waiting." The air turned icy. My breath fogged. I slammed the door shut, shoved my dresser against it, and spent the night staring wide-eyed until the sun bled through the curtains. Leah cornered me at school the next week. "You look like hell," she said, blunt as ever. "Thanks," I muttered. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "You saw him, didn't you?" The words punched the air out of me. I swallowed hard. You did too?" She nodded, tapping her notebook. I wasn't sure at first, thought maybe it was just me, but he was there, watching. I can't stop drawing him. It's like... She broke off, biting her lip. Like he wants us to remember, I finished. Her eyes widened. Has he talked to you? I asked. She looked away, but that was answer enough. That night, Leah called me. Her voice trembled through the phone. He was in my window. My blood froze. I was sketching, she said, and when I looked up, he was just standing there, outside, 3 stories up, grinning. I clutched the phone tighter. What did you do? I closed the blinds, but I can still feel him. He doesn't go away. We sat in silence, the line buzzing faintly between us. Terrian, she whispered, I think we brought something back from the theatre. The following week was a haze of fear. Leah and I barely spoke in class, but we didn't have to. The look in her eyes mirrored mine. Sleepless, haunted. The man was everywhere, reflected in windows, standing in the far corner of the cafeteria. Once I swore I saw him outside the school fence, hands gripping the bars, grin unbroken. No one else reacted. No one else saw. It was ours alone. One night, Leah called again, panic lacing every word. He's inside, she hissed. I heard the door open. My parents didn't wake up. He's in the hall. Call the police, I urged. They won't see him. They never do. Her voice cracked. He's closer. Terry, and he's... The line went dead. I called back. No answer. Again and again until my fingers ached. The next day, Leah wasn't at school. Mrs. Rankin said she was out sick, but when she didn't come the day after or the day after that, the pit in my stomach widened. I biked past her house one evening, curtains drawn, driveway empty. It looked abandoned. Leah never came back. The dreams grew worse. Now I wasn't just on stage. I was part of the play. The man stood in the wings, grinning, directing me with his long, bony finger. The shadow audience leaned closer each time I spoke. Their hunger was palpable. And always, when I faltered, when I tried to step away, his whisper returned. Closer, Terrian. Closer. One night, I woke to find words scrawled on my wall in black ink. Come back. My hands were stained with ink. My notebook lay open on my desk, filled with sketches I had no memory of drawing. Each one of him. I never told anyone, not my mum, not my teachers, who would believe me. But sometimes, when I walk past the old theatre in the city, because yes, it's still standing, still decaying, I swear I feel his eyes on me again. The marquee is dead now, the door's boarded. They say it's condemned, that no one goes inside anymore. But I know better. The theatre isn't empty. It's waiting. And someday, I think it wants me to come back. Months passed, but the memory never dulled. Leah never came back to school. At first there were whispers about illness, then rumors she'd moved away. No one seemed to know for sure. Her desk sat empty, the notebook she always carried gone with her. But I remembered what I'd seen inside it. Page after page of that grinning man. I tried to shove it down, to bury it under routine. Baseball in the spring, homework, even dumb TV shows with laugh tracks I didn't think were funny. But every so often, I'd glance at a window and see him reflected there, grinning, always grinning. And then the dreams returned. This time they weren't just on stage. I'd find myself back in the theatre's lobby, its air sour with mold and dust. The lights flickered, casting everything in fits of shadow. The concession stand glass was cracked, candy boxes swollen with age, and from deeper inside I'd hear it. The creak of a door, the low, rasping whisper, "Come closer." I'd wander, unable to stop myself, feet dragging toward the auditorium. The doors loomed, their brass handles cold under my hands. Inside, the seats were filled again, not with shadows, but with children. My classmates. Each one slumped, eyes wide, mouths slack, their skin pale as wax. On stage, Leah stood frozen, her notebook clutched to her chest. Her eyes found mine wide and pleading. But when I tried to call to her, no sound came. From the balcony, he rose. The man in the coat. His grin stretched wider than human lips should allow, his teeth jagged and too many. He pointed again, that finger long as a cane. pointed at me, the curtain fell, and I woke with my sheets damp, my breath ragged. I tried to avoid the city after that. If my mum suggested a shopping trip, I made excuses. If school talked about another field trip, I faked being sick. But fate has a way of dragging you back. It was a year later when it happened. 8th grade, different teacher, different class. Another field trip, this time to the art museum. The bus rolled through familiar streets, and as I pressed my forehead to the glass, my stomach lurched, because there it was, the old theatre. Boarded now, its windows shattered. Graffiti smeared across its once proud facade. The marquee sagged, letters long fallen. But in the highest window behind splintered boards I saw him, grinning, watching our bus roll past, and for a split second I swore Leah was beside him, her face pale, her notebook pressed to her chest. That night I dreamed again. Only this time there were no shadows, no stage. Just me standing before the theatre's doors. The boards peeled away with every step I took, rotting wood dissolving into dust. The brass handles gleamed, inviting. Come closer. I couldn't resist. Inside, the air was alive with whispers, thousands of voices overlapping, tugging at me from every corner. The seats were filled, not with children, not with shadows, but with hundreds of grinning figures, each one identical to the man in the coat. They turned in unison, their grins stretching wider, teeth flashing. On stage, Leah stood waiting. Her voice cracked as she finally spoke. "You shouldn't have come back." The curtain fell, and I woke to find my window open, though I hadn't touched it. The night air cut through me, carrying the faintest sound. A whisper. Closer. I never told anyone what I saw after that. Not my mom, not my friends. I knew no one would believe me. But sometimes when I walk at night, I feel it. A tug, a pull eastward toward the city, toward the theater, and in reflections, in glass and water and mirrors, I catch glimpses. That grin, those teeth. Leah was right. We brought something back. It didn't belong to the theater belonged to it. And now, in some awful way, so do I. Years later, long after I'd left that town, I tried to find records. The theater burned down in a fire, they said. No one hurt. It had been abandoned for years. But I know that isn't true. I know because when I close my eyes, I still see the seats filled. I still see Leah on the stage, and I still hear that whisper every night, no matter how far I run. Closer. Maybe someday I'll give in. Maybe someday I'll walk back through those doors, take my place in the rows of grinning faces. Maybe then the whisper will stop. But until then, I wait. And every time the lights dim in a theater, every time a curtain rises, I feel him there, watching, grinning, waiting for me to come closer. Do you ever sleep in a museum? Not just a quick nap while some droning guide explains fossils. I mean really sleep there. Lights out, sleeping bag rolled out on cold marble floors, the kind of educational overnight they hype up to kids like it as summer camp with dinosaurs. That's where my class ended up in the spring of '97. I was 12, awkward, and at that age where you're too old to get wide-eyed over a plastic T-Rex and too young to shrug off the goosebumps when shadows stretched across glass display cases. It was supposed to be fun, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to stay overnight at the Whitmore Historical and Natural Sciences Museum, the biggest and oldest museum in our part of New England. But I don't remember fun. I remember bones rattling in the dark. We rolled up on the big yellow school bus just before dusk. The museum was a towering stone thing, Roman columns out front like it thought it was the Parthenon. The walls were sooty, weather-stained, with gargoyle faces carved above the windows. A place built to impress you, but also to remind you how small you are. Inside, it smelled like every old building. Polish and dust, stone and metal. A faint sour note of something that had been locked away too long. The museum wasn't just natural history. It was a hodgepodge of local archives, art, Native American artifacts, even a section of old medical equipment from the early 1900s. Like someone couldn't decide if they wanted to teach kids about mastodons or Civil War surgery, so they crammed it all under one roof. Our class, about 30 of us, trooped inside with our bedrolls and backpacks. Two teachers were with us, Mr. Hanson, who taught science, and Ms. Lyle, the English teacher. They looked as excited as we were tired. A guide named Mrs. Dorsey met us in the Grand Rotunda. She was one of those women who dressed like a museum piece herself. Lace collar, stiff bun, voice clipped like every word was on display. "You children are in for a rare treat," she said, smiling with her lips but not her eyes. "Very few get to spend the night among the relics of our world." Behind her, a mammoth skeleton loomed, tusks curling toward the ceiling. Its hollow eye sockets seemed to be watching us. I swear even then I felt something shift in the air. They gave us rules right away, no wandering off. The museum was vast and confusing, Mrs. Dorsey said. No food outside the designated area. Bugs, mice, preservation of exhibits, lights out at 11. Staff would lock the front doors and patrol the halls until morning. Easy enough, except for the last one. Something about being locked in, that final metallic click of keys, turning in an ancient door, made my stomach twist. We ate pizza in the cafeteria, greasy, lukewarm, then set up our sleeping bags in the Hall of Mammals. Imagine 30 kids unrolling nylon and foam on a marble floor, beneath glass-eyed dioramas of lions and bears, elk frozen mid-charge. It was a hunter's paradise, taxidermy heaven or hell. Above us, giant painted murals stretched across the walls, scenes of wilderness, stormy skies, a horizon that seemed to vanish into shadow. I remember lying on my back, looking up at a painted wolf, its teeth bared in a silent snarl, and thinking, what happens when the lights go out? Before bed, they marched us through the exhibits with flashlights. Mrs. Dorsey's voice echoed in the cavernous halls as she pointed things out. We saw the fossil gallery, ribs of a brontosaurus arching like the frame of a cathedral. We saw mummies, curled brown bodies in glass coffins, their faces shriveled but their teeth still sharp. We saw a medicine exhibit, rusty bone saws, glass syringes like harpoons, cabinets of jars filled with cloudy liquids. One boy, Jason, whispered too loudly, "Bet they still got blood in 'em." Everyone laughed, but our guide didn't. She turned, flashlight beam catching her cheekbones sharp like knives. "Everything in this place has a spirit," she said softly. "You would do well to remember that." Even Mr. Hanson raised his eyebrows. On the second floor, we passed a corridor with a heavy oak door at the end, brass fittings, an old keyhole. A velvet rope hung across it. "What's in there?" the girl asked. "Closed exhibit," Mrs. Dorsey said quickly. "Storage and restoration. Not for children." But I noticed the way her eyes flicked toward it. Not annoyance, fear. That stuck with me. Even as we trudged back to the Hall of Mammals, even as we brushed our teeth in tiled bathrooms that smelled like mold, even as the guards dimmed the lights, that locked door burned in my thoughts. They killed the lights at 11 sharp. The hall plunged into blackness, only the glow of emergency exit signs and the faint spill of moonlight through high windows. 30 kids giggled and whispered, flashlights clicking on and off like fireflies. But the laughter didn't last long, because when the museum went quiet, it really went quiet. Not the quiet of your bedroom at night, where there's always a fridge hum or a car passing outside. This was the kind of silence that made you hear your own blood moving. And in that silence, the exhibits seemed alive. The lion in the glass case was its paw just an inch forward from where it had been. The bear's mouth, was it open wider? Shadows bent wrong, stretched long and crooked across the walls. I buried myself in my sleeping bag, but sleep didn't come. It must have been past midnight when I heard it. Not a kid whispering, not a snore, a scrape. Slow, heavy, from the hall outside. I froze. My flashlight was beside me, but I didn't dare reach for it. The scrape came again, like wood dragging across stone. Then a knock, soft, testing, at the double doors of the Hall of Mammals. I sat up, heart battering my ribs. My eyes adjusted enough to see other heads turning, shadows moving. Kids heard it too. The knock again, louder, then silence. I thought maybe a guard was checking doors, until the handle rattled. Not the firm twist of someone with a key, a slow, deliberate jangle, like fingers testing the metal. Then 3 sharp bangs. Several kids yelped. Miss Lyle stirred from her cot near the front and snapped, "Quiet down!" The noise stopped, but in the silence after, I swear I heard something else. Breathing, deep, wheezing, right on the other side of the door. I didn't sleep. Most of us didn't. Every creak of the old building sounded like footsteps. Every brush of air through the vents felt like breath on our necks. Somewhere, distant, a clock chimed 2 a.m. That's when I heard the whisper. Faint. From the hall, through the locked doors. It said my name. Not loud, not urgent, just a hiss, like someone pressing their lips to the keyhole. Eli? My blood went cold. No kid knew my full name like that. Not in that voice. Raspy, dry, like leaves crumbling. I squeezed my eyes shut, telling myself it was a dream. But I knew it wasn't. Because when I opened them, I saw something. The mammoth skeleton. Its skull had turned, just slightly. Now it was staring straight at me. You'd think a kid would cry or scream, or at least nudge the nearest classmate and whisper, "Did you see that?" But I didn't. I just lay there, paralyzed, eyes watering, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the shadows. The mammoth couldn't move. It was dead, dug up, wired together with bolts and rods. My brain told me that, but my gut told me something else. Every time I blinked, I swore the head tilted more. 1 degree, 2, slow and subtle, like someone adjusting it behind glass. Only there was no glass, no barrier between me and the ancient bones. I counted breaths, like my grandma had taught me when nightmares crawled out of the closet. By the time I got to 50, my eyelids were heavy. That's when something brushed my sleeping bag. Not hard, just the faintest drag of fingers right near my ankles. I snapped awake, flashlight in hand, beams slicing across the floor. Nothing, just rows of kids bundled in nylon cocoons, some turned on their sides, some dead asleep. But my bag bore the wrinkle of a crease, like someone had pinched the fabric and let go. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the overhead lights buzzed on at 6, half the kids groaned like zombies. The other half sighed with relief. Ms. Lyle tried to rally us with promises of pancakes in the cafeteria, but her voice was hoarse, and her eyes had shadows almost as dark as mine. Jason, the kid who'd joked about blood in jars, swaggered over while we packed. He had the kind of grin that belonged on a kid who never got caught, a daredevil without brakes. "You look pale, Eli," he said. "See a ghost?" I wanted to tell him about the whisper, about the mammoth, but I didn't, because Jason thrived on weakness. Instead, I said, "Did you hear the knocking?" His grin widened. "Yeah, sounded like someone wanted in. Maybe we should let him." He wasn't joking. Not entirely. That morning he gathered a little crew, 2 other boys, both smaller, hangers-on, who laughed at everything he said. I caught fragments of their whispers during breakfast. Upstairs, the locked room. Tonight, a pit formed in my stomach. The official schedule kept us busy. Scavenger hunts through the exhibits, lectures about fossils, even a hands-on station where we got to brush dirt off replica bones. But the whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not by teachers, not even by security guards, by the exhibits. Every glass-eyed mount seemed angled just so, watching us pass. The mummy's lips curled in a grimace. A row of Victorian dolls, their porcelain cheeks cracked, seemed to smile when no one looked directly. And the locked oak door on the 2nd floor. We passed it twice during tours, and both times I felt a thrum, like a second heartbeat inside my skull. Jason noticed too. He lingered near it until Mrs. Dorsey snapped, "Keep moving." He smirked at me across the hall, the kind of smirk that said, "Tonight." By lights out, nerves twisted my insides raw. The Hall of Mammals felt even darker than before, maybe because I knew what waited. I tried to bury myself in sleep, but Jason's whisper cut through the dark. "Eli." I pretended not to hear. "Eli, you coming?" I rolled over. He crouched 2 bags down, flashlight under his chin, casting his face into a devil's mask. Behind him were his 2 shadows, both jittery with adrenaline. "No," I hissed. "Scared?" "Yeah," I admitted. He grinned wider. "Good. That makes it more fun." And then they were slipping toward the door, sneakers muffled against marble. I told myself I'd let them go. Not my problem. Let the guards catch them. Let the teachers chew them out. But then I thought of the knock, the whisper, the way the mammoth skull had turned. Something waited upstairs, and Jason was walking right into it. Before I knew it, I was sliding out of my bag, clutching my flashlight like a weapon and following. The hall outside was colder, the kind of cold that lives in stone walls and never lets go. Our footsteps echoed even when we tried to walk soft. We moved past dioramas of prairie dogs and bobcats, past glass jars where pale fish floated like drowned dreams. Jason led, cocky as ever, light bobbing ahead of us. His crew whispered nervously. I trailed last, every shadow curling like smoke in the corners of my eyes. At the end of the corridor, the oak door waited. Up close, it was even more imposing. 8 feet tall, wood dark as dried blood, brass fittings dulled with age. The rope across it had been unhooked, drooping uselessly. Jason ran a hand over the knob. Locked, he muttered. Then his grin returned. But not for long. From his pocket he pulled a bent paperclip. "Where'd you—" one of his friends began. "Shop class," Jason cut in. "Watch and learn." I should have stopped him. Should have gone back, woken a teacher, done anything, but I didn't. Because part of me needed to know what was inside. It shouldn't have worked. Jason jiggled and twisted for maybe 20 seconds before a soft click echoed down the corridor. The door swung inward with a groan that raised the hairs on my arms. A smell rolled out, stale, metallic, like a basement that had been locked for decades. We shined our flashlights inside. The room beyond was huge, cavernous, with shelves that rose to the ceiling. But it wasn't storage, not the way Mrs. Dorsey had made it sound. It was more like a vault, rows of glass cases stretched before us. Some held artifacts, masks, statues, carved wooden figures with too many eyes. Others contained books, spines cracked, titles in languages I didn't recognize. And in the center of the room stood a pedestal. On it rested a box, small, iron-bound, covered in strange etchings that twisted when the light hit them. Jason's eyes lit up like Christmas. "Jackpot." "No," I said immediately. The word tore out of me before I could stop it. We shouldn't touch it, but Jason was already walking forward. The closer we got, the colder the air grew. Not normal cold. This was deep, biting, marrow-deep, like stepping into a freezer. Jason reached the pedestal. He ran a finger along the box. The metal hissed, like it burned him. He flinched, then laughed. Weird. Feels alive. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed, but my feet wouldn't move. Jason gripped the lid. "Bet there's treasure inside." "No," I whispered. "Don't." He looked back, grin sharp. "Scared again, Eli?" Then he lifted the lid. What came out, the hiss became a shriek. Not from Jason, from the air itself, from the box, from the etchings that writhed like snakes. A gust of wind roared through the room, though no window was open. Papers flew, books rattled, glass cases shook on their hinges. And from the box, something rose. Black, shapeless. A coil of shadow with eyes like dying stars. Jason screamed. The first real scream I'd ever heard from him. The thing lashed out, smoke and claws, a form that shifted between beast and void. One moment it had wings, the next a gaping jaw, the next nothing at all. Its voice wasn't sound. It was inside us. The lights flickered, then blew out. In the dark, kids cried, and something old and hungry moved through the museum. The moment the lights blew out, panic detonated. Flashlights swung wildly, beams slicing through dust and shadow. Jason's crew bolted toward the door, screaming, their sneakers slapping the marble. But the thing was faster. It surged forward in a swirl of black, tendrils lashing like whips. One wrapped around a shelf, snapping wood like twigs. Another scraped the wall, leaving claw marks carved into stone. Jason stumbled back, his face pale in the flashlight glow. "What the hell is it?" Nobody answered, because none of us had words. The shadow had eyes now, dozens of them, glowing red, darting in every direction, and each one focused on us, the first victim. One of Jason's sidekicks tripped near the pedestal. His scream split the air high and thin. He scrambled to get up, but the thing was already there. It didn't grab him. not the way you'd expect. It pulled him, like the boy was being sucked forward, his body stretching unnaturally, mouth opening wider than any scream should allow. His flashlight clattered to the floor, rolling in circles, its beam strobing the horror as the kid was swallowed by shadow. Gone. Just like that. And then, faintly, the boy's voice echoed back, but wrong. A whisper, stretched, broken. "Help me." It came from everywhere. From inside the walls, from the ceiling, from the thing itself. I think that's when we realized it wasn't just a monster. It was something worse. Running blind, Jason shouted, "Move!" and bolted. We followed because what else could we do? The four of us stumbled into the corridor, flashlights bouncing. Behind us, the oak door slammed shut with a boom that rattled the walls. I don't remember choosing a direction. We just ran deeper into the museum, past glass-eyed dioramas that seemed to leer as we passed. The hallways warped in the dark. Corners stretched. Staircases seemed longer than before. Exit signs flickered like dying stars. And always behind us the sound of dragging. Not footsteps, not claws. Dragging. Like something ancient being hauled across stone. We finally collapsed near the Hall of Fossils, gasping, chests heaving. Jason leaned against a railing, face slick with sweat. His one remaining friend clutched his arm, sobbing. We got to find a teacher," I stammered. "No," Jason barked. "They'll never believe us. We just need to get out." But the words rang hollow. The museum doors were locked, windows barred, and the guards, where were they? That's when I noticed the fossils. They weren't still. The Brontosaurus ribs trembled faintly. The T-Rex skull tilted, its jaw lowering a fraction of an inch. It was as if the shadow's presence had seeped into them, making them breathe. We crept forward, trying not to look at the skeletons towering above us. But I couldn't help it. Every fossil was vibrating, bones rattling softly against their mounts. A low hum filled the hall, a vibration deep in my teeth. And then, crack! A rib snapped free, clattering to the floor. Jason's friend screamed again. That was enough to wake the hall. The Brontosaurus shuddered, joints groaning, and began to rise. It wasn't alive, not really, but it moved. Bone grinding against bone, sockets glowing faint red. The T-Rex's skull turned, teeth glinting. And suddenly we weren't in a museum anymore. We were in a graveyard where the dead refused to rest. "Run!" Jason shouted again, and this time I didn't argue. We bolted down the hall as fossilized claws scraped stone behind us. Bones crashed, displays shattered, glass rained down like knives. I risked one glance back. The Brontosaurus lumbered forward, tail swinging, ribcage clattering. The T-Rex lurched, each step an earthquake, empty sockets glowing with the same red light as the shadow. And somewhere between them, that shadow moved too, stretching, twisting, wearing bones like a cloak. It wasn't just loose, it was possessing. We reached a fork in the museum corridors. One hall led toward the medical exhibit, the other back toward the Hall of Mammals. Jason didn't hesitate. He yanked his friend down the mammal corridor. "Come on!" he yelled at me. But something stopped me, because from the other corridor, from the medical wing, came a sound. Whispering. My name again. Eli. I froze. My flashlight flickered, stuttering in my hand. And in that flicker I thought I saw something. Not just the shadow, faces, dozens of them, layered in the dark. Some were kids, some were old. All were screaming. Jason cursed when I didn't follow. "Suit yourself." Then he and his friend vanished down the hall. I stood trembling, torn between choices. The whispers from the medical wing swelled. Not just my name anymore. Sentences, fragments. "Open the door. Set us free. It hurts. It hurts." My feet moved on their own. I crept into the hall, heart slamming so hard I thought it might echo off the walls. The exhibits loomed in the dark. Rusty bone saws, cracked leather straps from old hospital beds, glass jars cloudy with age. And in the center, a gurney. Strapped to it, something moved. The patient. At first, I thought it was a mannequin. Pale skin, stitched across the chest, head shaved. Then its eyes opened, milky white. Its lips peeled back, and it whispered, not with its mouth, with its skin. Every scar writhed, forming words. "You shouldn't have opened the box." I stumbled back, gagging. The patient lifted one hand, bone-thin fingers pointing past me. I turned. At the far end of the hall, the shadow waited, tall, vast, wearing bones like armor, its eyes locked on mine, and it smiled. The shadow filled the end of the hall. Bones shifted within it like fish beneath black water, ribs, jaws, vertebrae floating in its form. It was taller than the doorway, scraping the ceiling, and the red pinpricks of its eyes multiplied by the second. It didn't move at me right away. It just watched. The stitched patient on the gurney writhed. His lips moved now, voice ragged. "Don't look too long. Don't let it see inside you." But it was too late, because when I blinked, the shadow wasn't in the hall anymore. It was in my head. Suddenly I wasn't in the museum. I was standing in a vast desert, sand black and shimmering, sky pulsing red. The horizon writhed like it was alive, and scattered across the desert were boxes, dozens, hundreds, iron-bound like the one Jason had opened, some intact, some cracked. From the broken ones, shadows like this one were crawling out, clawing their way into the sky. And I knew. The museum hadn't built that vault to keep things safe. It had built it to keep things contained. But someone had been careless. Someone had left a crack in the chain, and Jason had finished the job. I staggered, clutching my head. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the medical hall. But the shadow was closer now, so close I could see teeth within its shape. Human teeth, too many, clattering as they gnawed at the air. I raised my flashlight. The beam cut into the thing, and for a split second it faltered. The patient croaked, "Light hurts it." The flashlight flickered in my hand. Of course, the batteries, the thing surged forward. The chase through the museum. I bolted. My sneakers squealed on tile as I tore back through the corridors, the beam of my dying flashlight bouncing crazily. Behind me, the shadow roared, low, guttural, a sound like 1,000 voices dragged over gravel. Every exhibit I passed came alive. The dolls' heads swiveled. The mummies sat up in their cases. Taxidermy wolves bared teeth that glistened wet in the dark. The museum wasn't just haunted anymore, it was awake, and it all wanted us. I crashed into the Hall of Mammals, nearly colliding with Jason and his last remaining friend. They froze when they saw me, wild-eyed. "It's coming," I gasped. As if on cue, the doors behind me blew open. Darkness poured in like smoke, crawling along the floor, filling the air with that choking metallic stench. Jason's bravado cracked. His voice shook. We gotta stop it." "How?" "The box," he said. "We put it back in the box." "Where's the box?" I shouted. His friend whimpered. Still in the vault." Of course it was. We could have run, tried to outlast it until morning, but I knew it wouldn't matter. The shadow wasn't just roaming halls, it was poisoning everything. Already the mammoth skeleton was moving again, tusks swinging like scythes. Already glass cracked as cases buckled under invisible pressure. If we didn't end it now, none of us were leaving. I don't know why I trusted Jason, the kid who started this, but in that moment, with the walls groaning and the thing spreading, he was all I had. "Then we go back," I said. The gauntlet. Getting to the vault was like running through hell. The halls were longer, bending at impossible angles. Statues reached from their pedestals. Shadows stretched too far, grabbing at our ankles. Once I felt a hand clamp my shoulder. I swung my flashlight and saw nothing, but the bruise bloomed later, dark and ugly. Jason's friend didn't make it. A shape lunged from a display, half man, half beast, all shadow. It swallowed him whole. His scream echoed long after he was gone. Jason didn't even slow down. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he wouldn't. It was just me and him now. The vault, again. We burst into the vault. The box still sat on the pedestal, its lid flung wide. Symbols writhed across its surface, hungry. The shadow poured in after us, massive now, a tide of black filling every corner. It wasn't a creature anymore. It was the room itself, the museum itself. Jason grabbed the box. His hands smoked where he touched it. "Help me!" he screamed. I grabbed the other side. The iron seared my palms, pain exploding up my arms, but I didn't let go. Together we fought to close the lid. The shadow shrieked. Bones rattled, glass shattered. Faces swam in the dark. Children, guards, even teachers, all screaming. And then, slam. The lid shut. Silence. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. The air went still, heavy. The temperature rose from freezer cold to suffocating heat. Jason collapsed to his knees, hands blistered. My own palms throbbed, raw and red. The box sat quiet. No hiss, no whisper, just silence. We waited. 1 second, 10, a full minute. And then, from the box, came a sound. A heartbeat. Slow, heavy, still alive, still waiting. We didn't speak. We didn't dare. We staggered out of the vault, half dead with exhaustion. The halls were silent now. Exhibits frozen again, glass cases intact, fossils still. It was like nothing had ever happened. By the time we made it back to the Hall of Mammals, the first light of dawn was creeping through the high windows. Teachers were waking, yawning, scolding kids for sneaking off, but when Ms. Lyle saw our burned hands, her face drained of color. She didn't ask. She didn't want to know. We never talked about it. Not in school, not after. Jason avoided me, his cocky grin gone for good. His friend, well, there was no explaining that. Teachers whispered about parents pulling him out, but I knew better. I still see him sometimes, in dreams, behind glass, pounding to get out. And the box. I heard later that the museum closed the second floor for renovations. But sometimes when I walk past the building, I swear I can hear it, that low, steady thump like a heart. Waiting. Years later. It's been decades now. I've got kids of my own. They want field trips. They want adventures. But when the permission slips come home, I read every line. I circle every word. And when I see the word museum, I tear it up. Because I know what waits there. Not exhibits, not fossils. Something older. Something hungrier. Something that doesn't sleep. Sometimes late at night when the house is quiet, I hear it again. Through the walls. Through the dark. Eli. And I know one day, one night, no matter how many years pass, the box will open again. Because things like that, they don't stay buried. Not forever. Field trips were supposed to be fun. Museums, aquariums, maybe a zoo if the budget allowed. But junior year, our school decided to get ambitious. Leadership retreat, the flyer said. A weekend in the woods. Cabins, bonfires, hikes. A chance to bond as a class. Parents ate it up. Teachers pitched it as a rite of passage. But from the moment I saw the flyer, I had a bad feeling. It wasn't the cheesy, smiling kids in the photo, or the stock art of a pine forest. It was the logo at the bottom. A circle with 3 jagged lines like claws. I couldn't say why, but it made my stomach turn. The trip was 4 hours north, past farmland, past suburbs, into endless trees. The bus was rowdy at first. Music blasting from someone's speaker, kids throwing candy, laughter echoing down the aisles. But as the miles passed, the mood shifted. The trees grew taller, denser, blocking out the sun. Cell service dropped. Even the teachers looked uneasy. By the 3rd hour, no one was laughing anymore. I pressed my forehead to the glass and watched the forest swallow the road. And I swear, just for a second, I saw someone standing between the trees. Not a hiker, not a camper. A tall figure, too still, too thin, watching us pass. The camp was a scattering of cabins around a lake. Wooden signs pointed to trails, an archery range, a dining hall. On the surface, it looked like every summer camp you've ever seen. But something was off. For one, the cabins were old. Not rustic, rotting. Wood eaten by insects, roofs sagging. Some windows were boarded over. For another, the counselors didn't look like college kids earning extra cash. They were older, weathered, faces lined deep, eyes sharp. and none of them smiled. Our head counselor, a man named Cal, had a voice like gravel. "You stay together. You follow rules. Woods don't forgive mistakes." We laughed nervously, but he didn't. That night, after orientation and a bland dinner, we gathered at the fire pit. Cal told a story about the camp's history, how it was built on old hunting grounds, how the forest had its own ways, and how once long ago a group of kids wandered off trail and never came back. The teachers chuckled like it was a campfire ghost story. But Cal didn't. He stared at us, unblinking, until the fire popped and someone coughed. Then he said something I'll never forget. "The woods remember, they don't forget trespassers, and sometimes they don't forgive." We went to bed in silence. I shared a cabin with 5 other guys. The bunks creaked, the mattresses smelled of mildew, and something scratched inside the walls at night. I thought it was mice until I saw the marks, deep grooves carved into the wood near my bed. 3 parallel lines, the same symbol from the flyer, the first disappearance. The next morning, we split into groups for activities: archery, canoeing, hiking. My group was on the lake when the scream came, high, sharp, and cut short. We paddled back fast. Everyone gathered at the trailhead, counselors barking orders, teachers wringing their hands. One kid, David, from the other cabin, was gone. Counselors said he wandered. They organized a search, but we weren't allowed to help. We sat in the dining hall picking at lunch while teachers whispered. Hours later, Cal returned, alone. He told us David must have gone home early. We knew it was a lie. That night, I woke to scratching again. This time, I saw it. Not mice, not raccoons. Long, pale fingers reaching through the slats, dragging nails down the wood in 3 deep gouges. I froze, pretended to sleep. When I looked again, the hand was gone. But the marks were deeper now, fresh. And in the silence that followed, I heard a whisper. Not outside, inside my head. "Don't wander," continued in next sections. When the bell clanged for breakfast, none of us had slept much. The teachers tried to keep things normal. Pancakes, orange juice, polite chatter. But the kids were quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. David didn't just leave. His backpack was still in his cabin, his jacket too. You don't hike out of the woods in the middle of the night without your things. But the counselors smiled stiffly, told jokes that didn't land, and insisted David's parents had picked him up. When one of my friends muttered "bullshit," I swear Cal's eyes locked on us. Not angry, not suspicious, hungry. After breakfast, we were herded into activities again. My group drew the short straw, the leadership hike. Cal himself led it. He made us walk in silence, single file, through dense pines that blocked out most of the morning light. The forest floor was damp, and the air smelled of rot. Every so often, Cal would stop and tilt his head like he was listening. We'd all freeze. And in the silence I could hear it too. Not birds, not wind, whispering. Low, layered voices like dozens of throats murmuring together. None of us dared mention it. But I think we all heard the same word. Names. After an hour, we reached a clearing. It wasn't natural. Trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks scarred with the same 3 claw marks from the cabins. In the center stood a stone slab. Dark, flat, big enough for someone to lie on. I swallowed hard. It looked like an altar. Cal turned to us. "This place is important. A reminder." "Of what?" one of the girls asked. His mouth curled. "Of what happens when the woods aren't respected." Then he made us stand around the slab, hold hands, and close our eyes. I tried to refuse, but when Cal's grip tightened on my wrist, it felt like bone-crushing steel. So I obeyed. The moment my eyes shut, I saw it. Not like imagination, more like a screen flickering to life inside my skull. The forest, but older. Shadows moving between trees. Children running, barefoot, chased by something too tall to see clearly. They fell one by one. Screams cut short, and the thing dragged them back toward the clearing. Blood soaked the stone slab. When I tore my eyes open, I wasn't alone. Half the group had collapsed, trembling. One kid puked into the grass. Another sobbed. Cal only smiled. "The woods have chosen you," he said. Another missing. By the time we returned, the sun was dipping. The teachers looked relieved until they counted heads. A kid named Marcus, gone. Cal shrugged, unconcerned. He wandered. But I'd walked behind Marcus the whole way back. I knew he hadn't wandered. 1 second he was there, the next the trail bent and he wasn't. It was like the forest had swallowed him. The teachers pressed for answers, but the counselors' faces hardened. Cal spoke low like a warning. The woods take who they take. And that was the end of it. That night, no one slept. We barricaded the cabin door with bunks, whispered theories until our throats were raw. "Maybe it's some cult thing," one kid said. "They're feeding us to something," another added. I didn't argue, because I kept hearing it, the scratching. This time, not just on the walls, from under the beds. I pressed my ear to the floorboards and nearly screamed. Something was crawling beneath us, nails dragging, breath rasping. And then, faintly, almost tenderly, my name again. Eli. The counselors round. Sometime after midnight, boots crunched outside. We killed our flashlights and listened. A shadow crossed the window. Cal. But he wasn't alone. 3 other counselors trailed him, each carrying lanterns. They weren't patrolling, they were circling. Slow, deliberate, chanting in voices too low to catch. One by one, they dragged their hands across the cabin walls, leaving behind those 3 deep claw marks. It wasn't random vandalism, it was ritual. And when they passed beneath my window, I saw Cal's face in the lantern light. His mouth was moving. But the voice I heard wasn't human. It was the same whisper I'd heard in the woods, layered, hungry. The next day, activities were cancelled. Instead, everyone was ordered to the fire pit for reflection. Teachers tried to complain, but Cal silenced them with a look. The fire roared higher than it should have. Sparks swirled into the grey sky, and one by one, we were told to approach, not to roast marshmallows. Cal handed out knives, small, rusty. He made each of us prick a finger and let a drop fall into the flames. The fire hissed, flared green. The counselors nodded, satisfied. But when the blade passed to me, I saw something carved into the handle. 3 parallel lines, the same mark from the cabins, from the trees, from the dreams. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. While the others pretended to sleep, I slipped out, heart hammering. I meant to make for the road. Even 4 hours of hiking in the dark felt safer than another minute here. But I didn't make it far. The forest bent around me, trails twisting, trees crowding, until I found myself back in the clearing. The slab waited, and so did Cal. His lantern glowed, casting shadows that seemed too large, too many. He smiled. "The woods want you, Eli, but they'll settle for a bargain." I croaked, "What kind of bargain?" He lifted a finger, pointed back toward camp. "Choose one. Choose one." The words rattled in my skull, low and heavy. I shook my head. "No, you're insane." Cal stepped closer, lantern light catching his eyes. Except they weren't eyes anymore. They were pits, black, endless, with something moving deep inside them. "You don't understand," he rasped. "The woods already have their price. Refuse and they'll take everyone. Accept and they'll take only the one you choose." I wanted to run, wanted to scream, but the forest pressed in, roots tangling at my feet, branches swaying without wind. It wasn't Cal holding me there. It was the woods. Cal pressed the knife into my hand, the same blade from the fire, rusted and carved with those 3 lines. My fingers burned as they closed around it, like the metal was alive. He leaned close, breath sour. "Mark, the one you choose. That's all." And then he was gone. Not walked away. Gone. Lanterns snuffed, shadow swallowed by trees. I stumbled back toward camp in a daze, knife still in my grip. The cabins glowed faintly in the distance, kids asleep inside, and all I could think was, if I didn't choose, if I didn't mark someone, the woods would. Back in the cabin, I hid the knife under my pillow. I didn't sleep. Every creak, every breath, I wondered if the woods were choosing for me. Sometime after midnight I felt it again, the scratching under the floorboards. But this time it didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, and then I heard it, a voice, but not whispering my name, whispering another. Jason! The boy across from me stirred, groaned in his sleep. The claws scraped harder, right beneath his bed. The woods were choosing. I couldn't let it happen. On instinct, I grabbed the knife, stumbled across the cabin, and slashed it across the wooden floor between Jason's bunk and the sound. The blade burned hot, sparking red against the boards. The scratching stopped. Everyone woke screaming, flashlights snapping on. They saw me standing there, knife glowing faintly, eyes wide. "What the hell are you doing?" Jason shrieked. I had no answer, because at that moment the scratches started again, this time at the door. Deep gouges, 3 parallel lines carving themselves into the wood. The door exploded inward. Something rushed through. Not Cal, not any counselor. It was taller, boneless, draped in shadows. Its head brushed the ceiling, limbs bending wrong, claws scraping. The kids screamed, scattering. I raised the knife without thinking. The creature paused, its faceless head tilted toward me. Then it lunged. I swung. The blade seared through its arm like paper, leaving a smoking wound. The thing shrieked, a sound that rattled windows. It recoiled, melted back through the doorway, vanishing into the night. All eyes were on me. The revelation. The teachers stormed in seconds later, trailed by counselors. I expected Cal to be furious, to kill me right there. But instead, he smiled. "You see," he said to the others, "the woods chose him. He's marked." The counselors murmured, nodding. The teachers protested, shouting about safety, about shutting this madness down. Cal silenced them with a glare. Then he looked at me. "You carry the knife now. That means you carry the burden. The woods will keep testing you until you choose." I clutched the blade, still warm, still humming in my hand. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd already been chosen long before this trip. The second night. No one slept after that. The counselors patrolled, lanterns bobbing. The teachers huddled, whispering frantically. And the kids. They avoided me. Some glared like I'd caused this. Others kept their distance, afraid I'd bring the woods down on them. Maybe they were right, because when I finally closed my eyes, I dreamed of the clearing again. Blood dripping down its sides, and Cal's voice whispering, "Choose one, Eli, or the woods will choose for you." When I woke, the knife was lying on my chest. I hadn't put it there. Morning horror. At dawn, the counselors rang the bell. Everyone assembled at the fire pit, groggy and terrified. One bunk was empty. The teachers counted twice, faces pale. It was Jason, the kid whose name the woods had whispered. Gone. His bunk was shredded. 3 long gouges carved deep into the mattress, soaked in blood. No body. No Jason, just the marks. The counselors didn't pretend this time, didn't spin a lie. Cal just looked at me, eyes hollow, and said, "You should have chosen." The camp fractured after that. Half the kids wanted to run, half wanted to bargain. The teachers tried to take control, but the counselors boxed them in. "You leave," Cal said coldly, "and the woods take all of you." So we stayed. But every shadow seemed thicker now. Every tree leaned closer. Every whisper in the wind sounded like a name, and I couldn't shake the knife. It felt fused to me. Whenever I tried to drop it, it appeared back in my hand, and at night I swore I could hear it breathing. That evening, Cal called me to the dining hall. The other counselors sat around a long table, lanterns casting warped shadows on their faces. Cal placed a wooden bowl in front of me. Inside were scraps of paper, each with a name, my classmates. "Pull one," he said. "Mark them. The woods will be satisfied." I stared at the bowl, at the knife in my hand, at the counselors' expectant faces, and I realized there was no way out, not unless I made a choice. The bowl of names. The wooden bowl sat heavy in front of me, names scrawled in pencil on scraps of paper. Every kid in camp, my friends, my classmates. My hands shook as I stared at them. Cal's voice slithered through the air. "Pull one. Make the mark. The woods will be satisfied." "I'm not doing this," I croaked. You already are, he said. Every second you hesitate, the woods grow hungrier. And when they're hungry, he leaned forward, eyes black pits. They take more than you're willing to give. The counselors murmured agreement, their whispers like wind in dead leaves. I slammed the bowl away, papers scattered across the table, and something happened. The lanterns flickered. The woods outside roared with voices, dozens, hundreds, all screaming at once. The counselors froze, staring at me like I'd broken some sacred rule. And maybe I had. The floorboards shook, dishes clattered off shelves. One counselor fell to his knees, clutching his head. "They're coming," he gasped. The walls split with claws, 3 deep gouges running floor to ceiling. Cold wind howled through the cracks. And then from outside, a scream. High. Familiar. I stumbled to the window. Across the fire pit, a girl, Tina, was being dragged into the tree line by something tall and faceless. Her nails scraped dirt, leaving trails. The teachers lunged to help, but the counselors blocked them, holding firm. "It's too late," Cal hissed. "The woods have chosen their own." I turned on him, knife raised. "You could have stopped it." His smile was terrible. "No, you could have." Something in me snapped. I lunged across the table, slashing the blade. Cal caught my wrist mid-swing, grip like iron. The knife seared between us, glowing hot. Smoke curled from his hand where he held me, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned closer, voice low. "They don't want me. They want you. They always wanted you." The room spun. My chest squeezed, and in the dark of his eyes I saw it. The clearing, the slab, me lying on it, the knife in my chest, blood feeding the roots. I wrenched free, bolted from the dining hall. The counselors didn't chase, they didn't need to, the woods would. Kids scattered as I ran, some screamed my name, others shrank back. I didn't stop until I reached the lake. Moonlight shimmered on black water. I thought about diving in, swimming for the far shore, but when I looked, I saw faces beneath the surface, pale, bloated, staring up with empty eyes. The kids who'd vanished. Their mouths opened in unison. "Join us." I staggered back, bile burning my throat. There was no way out. Confrontation. Footsteps crunched behind me. Cal, alone, lantern swinging. "You can't fight them," he said softly. "You can only feed them. The longer you resist, the worse it gets." "Why me?" I choked. "Because you hear them. Because you carry the knife. Because you've been chosen since before you were born." He raised his lantern, and the light caught something carved into my arm. 3 faint scars. Old. Healed. Marks I didn't remember getting. My stomach turned. Had I been theirs all along? Cal gestured toward the clearing. "Come willingly, end it quickly, or watch them all die." I looked back toward camp. The cabins shook, kids screaming inside, shadows clawing at the walls. If I refused, the woods would take everyone. If I accepted, they'd take me. I tightened my grip on the knife. Maybe there was a third option. The clearing again. They dragged me back anyway. Not counselors this time. The woods themselves. Branches twisted into hands, roots coiled around my ankles, dragging me forward. I stumbled into the clearing, thrown against the slab. The counselors circled, chanting low, teachers bound beside them, eyes wide with terror. The kids huddled at the edge, sobbing. Cal stepped forward, blade raised. Not my blade, another. Black, jagged, pulsing like it had veins. He smiled down at me. "The woods will feed tonight." But before he could strike, I raised my knife. The blade screamed, yes, screamed as it touched the slab. Red light flared, cracks spiderwebbing through stone. The ground shook, the trees howled, and suddenly the voices weren't demanding, they were panicking. Cal staggered back. "What have you done?" I pressed harder, driving the glowing knife deep into the slab. It split in 2. The chanting broke. The counselors fell, writhing, clawing at their faces. And the shadows screamed as they tore loose from the trees, ripped into the air like smoke in a storm. The forest convulsed. Cabins collapsed. The lake churned, vomiting bodies onto the shore. Kids flared in every direction. Teachers dragged them toward the buses. I pulled the knife free, but it wasn't a knife anymore. It was bone, my bone, and my arm, hollow where the scarred marks had been. The woods hadn't let me go, they'd just claimed a piece. Cal crawled toward me, face blistered, eyes leaking black. "It isn't over," he rasped. "You broke the slab, but the woods will never stop. You're theirs, always theirs." He collapsed, body crumbling to ash. We made it out by dawn. The buses still worked somehow. Teachers herded us on, engines growling, wheels spitting dirt as we roared down the forest road. No one looked back, except me, and when I did, I saw them. Figures standing at the tree line, tall, thin, faceless, dozens of them, watching, waiting. I clutched the knife bone under my jacket, its hum now faint but constant, and I understood. We'd left the woods behind, but the woods hadn't left me. Epilogue. The scratch back home, life pretended to return to normal. School resumed. Parents asked too many questions. The official story was gas leak at the retreat, but the survivors knew better. At night, when the world is quiet, I still hear it. The scratching, under my bed, inside my walls. Sometimes I wake with fresh marks on my arm. 3 parallel lines. The woods are patient, and I know one day soon they'll come collect the rest. Field trips usually meant adventure, but when our school announced an overnight stay at the old zoo, excitement buzzed like electricity. The zoo had been shut down for years. Funding cuts, rumors of safety violations, maybe even animal cruelty. Nobody knew the whole story. When we rolled up in the buses, the air already felt wrong. The front gate stood tall, black iron twisted into snarling lions and serpents. The paint peeled, chains rusted, and signs dangled crookedly, closed to public. Do not enter. But we entered anyway. The teachers smiled too wide. "It'll be fun," they said. "Educational." We carried sleeping bags and flashlights past cages lined with weeds, past enclosures where vines had grown thick through bars. It smelled of rot and rust. And something else, something faint, like wet fur. Our guide was a man named Mr. Grayson. He wasn't a teacher. He wasn't a park ranger either, just a stranger. Tall, pale, wearing a faded zookeeper's uniform. The badge was cracked, the name barely legible. He greeted us at the entrance with a smile too sharp. "Welcome back, children," he said, voice gravelly. "The animals have missed you." Some kids laughed nervously. Teachers hushed them, nodding like this was normal. We followed Grayson down broken paths, flashlights bobbing in the dusk. He pointed out empty cages like they were still occupied. Here we had the great silverback, very clever. He remembered faces, held grudges. Over here the wolves, they sang every night when the moon was full. Sometimes they still do. His eyes glittered when he said it, and for a moment I thought I did hear something. Low, distant. A howl. By the time we reached the main plaza, night had fallen hard. The zoo's central building loomed, a cracked glass dome half covered in ivy. The reptile house once, now our campsite. Inside, the air was damp and stale. Glass tanks lined the walls, empty but smudged. Some still bore faded plaques: cobra, Komodo dragon, anaconda. Sleeping bags spread across the tile floor. Teachers ordered lights out, but none of us slept. Because as the dark settled in, the sounds began. Scraping, shuffling, like claws against glass, and whispers that slithered through the halls. The first missing kid I woke to screaming. Flashlights snapped on. Shadows leapt across cracked tanks. One kid, Harper, was gone. Her sleeping bag lay shredded, long claw marks tearing through nylon and foam. Blood dotted the tile. The teachers rushed us into a corner, whispering panicked orders. Mr. Grayson appeared out of the shadows, calm as ever. "The animals are restless tonight," he murmured. "They remember the taste of children." Teachers shouted at him, demanded answers. He only smiled. "Stay together. Don't wander. And whatever you hear, don't answer it." We tried to stay calm, but in the silence it started. A voice faint, calling from the dark. "Help me." It was Harper, her voice thin, desperate. "Please, I'm stuck, come get me." Every kid froze. Some teachers wanted to look, others shook their heads. I gripped my flashlight, shaking. because I knew it wasn't her. The voice was too perfect, like a recording, repeating the same cracks in tone, the same sobs, like something learning how to sound human. One boy, Tyler, broke. He ran for the doors, screaming Harper's name. The teachers grabbed for him but missed. He disappeared into the reptile wing. Seconds later came the shriek. Not human, not animal, something in between. Then silence. And when Tyler finally came back, he wasn't Tyler anymore. Wrong. He walked stiffly, head tilted too far to one side. His skin looked too pale, his eyes too glassy, and when he spoke, the voice was wrong. Flat. Off. "Don't worry," he said. "It's safe now. We can explore." Blood dripped from his shoes. The teachers tried to block him, shouting at the kids to stay back. But the other children didn't listen. They stared at him, eyes wide, faces slack. One by one they stood and began following him into the dark, like sleepwalkers. I grabbed my best friend Jenna and yanked her down behind a tank. "Don't look at him," I hissed. But she was trembling, her gaze locked. He sounds like my brother." I shook her hard. "It's not him." Above us, footsteps shuffled. More voices called out, mimicking classmates, parents, even teachers, dozens of voices. And through the cracks in the glass dome, I saw movement outside. Shapes, tall, bent, crawling along the cages, watching, waiting. Mr. Grayson's truth hours bled by in terror. Kids vanished. Teachers fought to keep order. Finally, Mr. Grayson returned, lantern in hand. But this time his smile was gone. "You should never have come here," he said. "They were promised silence, but you brought noise, laughter, warmth. They remember what was taken from them." "What are you talking about?" a teacher snapped. Grayson sighed. "The animals. They weren't killed when the zoo shut down." "Not exactly. The experiments made sure of that. New bodies, new hungers, new cages." He looked at us with something like pity. "They're not animals anymore, but they're not human either. They're something in between. And they want you to join them." The lights went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. And then the sounds came. Snapping jaws, claws scraping tile, hisses, growls, guttural roars, screams. I grabbed Jenna's hand and ran, heart slamming, lungs burning. Behind us, wet tearing sounds, bones cracking. The zoo was alive again, and we were its food. Running blind. We bolted into the reptile wing, flashlights jerking across shattered tanks. Glass crunched underfoot. The smell hit hard, rot, musk, something reptilian that clung to the back of my throat. Behind us, chaos thundered through the dome. Screams snapped short. Wet tearing sounds followed. I didn't look back. Jenna tripped on a loose tile, nearly dragging me down. I hauled her up, heart pounding. "They'll find us," she gasped. "I know." We ducked behind a tank labeled boa constrictor, its glass webbed with cracks. Something slick moved inside the shadows, too large to be a snake, too wrong to be human. I yanked Jenna away. "Don't look." But the thing pressed its face against the glass, grinning with too many teeth. The reptile wing narrowed into a corridor lined with tanks on both sides. Our flashlights bounced across warped reflections, our faces fractured, stretched, multiplied in the glass. Every reflection looked wrong. One version of me smiled when I wasn't. Another blinked out of sync. Jenna's reflection turned its head, even after she stood perfectly still. Then the voices started again. "Jenna, over here. Help me." Her brother's voice. Clear. Too clear. She froze, flashlight trembling. "It's not real," I hissed, gripping her arm. But one reflection, one of me, leaned forward and whispered, "She's already chosen. Let her go." I smashed the tank with the butt of my flashlight, glass spiderwebbed, a hiss leaking out. Something huge shifted inside, scales rasping against the shards. We ran. The old carnivore row. The hallway dumped us into the outdoor enclosures. Rusted fences rose on either side, signs bleached by sun and rain. Tiger, lion, hyena. But the cages weren't empty. Shapes lurked in the dark, pacing. I caught a flash of yellow eyes, a jaw too wide, teeth crooked, dripping. Fur sloughed off in patches, revealing something raw underneath. except it didn't move like a lion anymore. Its limbs bent too far. Its mane writhed like tendrils. It pressed against the bars and the steel groaned. Jenna whimpered. We edged past, slow, praying the cages still held. Then one of the doors swung open on rusted hinges. Empty. The hyena's cage. Laughter in the dark. The sound came first. High-pitched broken giggles. Not animal, not human. A chorus of laughter that crawled under my skin. We backed against the opposite fence, flashlights trembling. The shadows shifted. Something hunched, long-limbed, skittered across the ground. It laughed again, right behind us. We spun. Nothing. The laughter multiplied, bouncing off the walls, echoing too many directions. Then a hand shot out from the dark. Not paw. Hand. Long fingers tipped with claws. It grazed Jenna's shoulder, leaving 4 bloody lines. She screamed. I yanked her forward. We ran, laughter chasing us, circling us, driving us deeper into the zoo. The elephant grave. We stumbled into a wide pit. The sign overhead read, "Elephant Exhibit." But no elephants lived here now. The ground was littered with bones. Massive skulls cracked down the middle. Rib cages split open, gnawed hollow. Some bones were too small, human small. Jenna gagged, clutching her stomach. I shined my light across the pit. For a second I thought I saw something enormous moving. Shadows like tusks. A shape lumbering, silent in the fog. Then it was gone. But the ground shook faintly, like something massive was walking just beneath the dirt. We scrambled up the far side, desperate to get away before the earth opened. Mr. Grayson again. We found him near the primate house. Lantern swinging, uniform torn, eyes gleaming too bright. He didn't look surprised to see us. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "They'll smell your fear." "What are they?" I demanded. My voice cracked. Grayson tilted his head. "They used to be animals. Then they were experiments. Now they're hungry. Do you know what hunger does to a creature?" He stepped closer, lantern light carving deep shadows into his face. "It changes them. Makes them smarter, meaner. Makes them mimic the thing that feeds them best." He leaned close, whispering, "And you, children, you feed them better than anything else." Jenna pulled me back. "We have to go." But Grayson blocked the path, lantern swinging. "You can't run forever. The zoo doesn't let you leave until you belong." His smile stretched too wide, and for a heartbeat, his jaw unhinged just a little too far. Escape to the aviary. We shoved past him and bolted, ignoring his rasping laugh. The path forked, and we plunged into a glass dome labeled, "The air hit hot and wet." Feathers clung to the floor. Rotten nests sagged from beams overhead, and something perched in the rafters. Dozens of somethings. Eyes glowed in the dark, bobbing with each twitch of heads. Wings rustled, too big, too heavy. Then came the shriek. Not bird, not human. Both. The flock dropped from the rafters, wings beating like thunder. Talons scraped glass, beaks snapped, feathers cut the air like blades. We ran under a storm of wings, shielding our faces. Blood welled from cuts where feathers sliced skin. Jenna tripped. A talon snagged her sleeping bag, dragging her backward. I slashed with my flashlight, breaking the bird thing's grip, and yanked her free. We crashed through the opposite door, lungs burning, ears ringing with shrieks. The seal pool. The next enclosure reeked of brine and decay. The cracked pool stretched wide, water black and stagnant. Something moved under the surface. A sleek shape glided close, then vanished. Another surfaced, head smooth, eyes too large, teeth jagged where whiskers should be. It grinned, and then it spoke. Hungry. The water erupted. Dozens of pale shapes leapt, jaws snapping, hands, not fins, grabbing the edge of the pool. We bolted around the water, but the seal things dragged themselves halfway out, crawling with grotesque effort, gurgling laughter bubbling from their throats. One clamped a hand around my ankle. Cold, slick, slimy. I kicked, flashlight cracking against its skull. Bone gave with a sickening pop. It sank back into the black. We didn't slow down. We stumbled into the primate building, breath ragged. Bars stretched floor to ceiling, rusted and bent. Inside, shadows swayed from the rafters. Long arms dangled, fingers twitching. Then came the chatter. Dozens of voices, rapid, high-pitched, but mixed into the chatter were words. Our names, over and over. Eli, Jenna, Eli, Jenna. A face pressed against the bars, hairless, grey, eyes human but wrong, teeth filed sharp. It grinned. Others joined, dozens of faces leering, whispering, chanting our names until it became one droning hum. Jenna clutched her ears, sobbing. I grabbed her hand, dragged her toward the far door. But as we reached it, the bars creaked. The monkey things began to climb out. The chase. They came in a wave, leaping, swinging, screeching, chanting our names. We sprinted, dodging grasping hands, claws raking skin. One landed on Jenna's back. She screamed, buckling under its weight. I swung my flashlight, smashing its skull. It shrieked, fell limp. But more followed. We burst into the night, sprinting through weeds and cracked pavement, the primate horde right behind. The zoo had come alive. Every cage, every shadow, every enclosure, something stirred. And they all wanted us. We spotted a rusting watchtower near the back gate. We scrambled up the ladder, metal groaning under our weight. From the top, we could see the whole zoo. The aviary dome pulsed with wings. The reptile house glowed faintly, glass shattering. The elephant pit shifted, earth bulging as something enormous moved below, and the paths swarmed with creatures, skittering, crawling, limping, hunting. The zoo wasn't dead. It was waiting, and we were trapped in its heart. From the tower we watched the zoo seethe. Shapes crawled between enclosures, their outlines twisted in the moonlight. Some moved on all fours, some on two, some shifted between both, and all of them were looking up at us. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Eyes glowed like embers in the dark. Then the laughter began again. High, broken, overlapping. Hyenas, monkeys, children. A choir of mockery that rattled the metal beneath our feet. Jenna squeezed my hand so tight my knuckles cracked. They can't climb, she whispered, trying to convince herself. But the first shape stepped forward and gripped the tower's ladder. Its body was wrong, too long, too thin, arms bending the wrong way. A lion's mane dangled from its shoulders, matted and wet. Its hands ended in claws that dug into the rungs. It started to climb. More followed. Dozens of them, swarming the base, scrabbling at the metal, some crawling over each other, shrieking. The tower swayed. I grabbed a rusted crowbar lying near an old guard chair. "Help me!" We kicked, swung, smashed hands and skulls. Creatures fell back, shrieking, bones cracking when they hit the ground. But more replaced them. The metal groaned, a deep, wrenching sound. Jenna's eyes filled with terror. "It's not gonna hold." I scanned the horizon, desperate. And there it was, beyond the chain-link fence. The buses, abandoned, dark, but still there. The only way out. But between us and them stretched a writhing zoo of monsters. "We jump," I said. Jenna shook her head violently. "We'll break our legs." "Better than being torn apart." She hesitated, looked at the climbing horde, at the groaning tower, at the hunger glowing below. Finally she nodded. We braced on the rail, counted down, and leapt. The ground hit hard. Pain shot up my legs, knees buckling. Jenna cried out, clutching her ankle, but she was moving. We staggered, limping, running through weeds and cracked pavement. Behind us, the tower screamed, metal twisting. It collapsed in a roar of dust and screeching creatures, a storm of wings and claws spilling outward. The zoo was awake now, and it was coming for us. We ran blind, past cages that rattled, bars bending outward, past the elephant pit where the earth heaved, tusks of bone punching through dirt like spears. The hyena's laughter followed, bouncing from every wall. The monkey horde leapt from trees, but we ducked low, sprinting through brush. Something huge bellowed, a roar that shook the ground. I didn't look. The buses were close, so close. The chain-link gate loomed, padlock rusted but still clinging. I slammed the crowbar into it, over and over, arms screaming, metal groaning. Jenna beat on it too, sobbing, ankle dragging uselessly. Behind us, shadows surged. Dozens of creatures, all shapes and sizes, eyes burning, mouths stretching. The lock snapped. We shoved the gate open, stumbled through, and ran for the buses. There were 3, windows dusty, paint peeling, but solid. We yanked open the nearest door and scrambled inside. Empty. Seats ripped, foam spilling out, floor sticky with something dark. But it was a barrier. We slammed the door shut just as the first wave hit. Claws scraped metal, bodies slammed the sides. Screeches rattled the glass, the bus rocked. Jenna slid under a seat, sobbing. I pressed against the window, crowbar raised, watching shadows press their faces against the glass. And then I realized we weren't alone. Something sat slumped in the driver's seat. At first I thought it was just a corpse, head bent, cap low. Then it twitched. The head rolled back, eyes opened, white, glazed, wrong, and the mouth stretched into a smile. "Tickets, please," it rasped. Jenna screamed. The driver lunged. I swung the crowbar, cracking its skull. Bone split, black fluid spraying, but it didn't stop. Its head dangled, jaw unhinged, but its hands, long-clawed, skin rubbery, grabbed my throat. I choked, slammed the crowbar again, until the skull caved in. It collapsed, twitching, limbs flailing. Outside, the creatures howled, clawing the bus, glass cracking. The driver's body jerked once more, then lay still. Jenna crawled out, face pale, eyes wild. "We can't stay here." She was right. The glass wouldn't hold. We needed another way. We shoved through the back door, tumbling into the night. The horde surged, but we ducked under the bus, crawling through oil and rust. Claws swiped inches from our skin. Teeth snapped, scraping metal. We scrambled out the far side, sprinting for the second bus, but the door was locked. The third bus stood further back, half hidden in weeds. Its windows were broken, vines crawling through. It was open. We dashed for it, screaming as claws raked our backs, as hands reached, pulling at our clothes. We dove inside. This bus was worse. The seats were gone, the floor sticky, covered in strange stains, and the wheel was slick with something dark. But the keys dangled in the ignition. Jenna's eyes lit with desperate hope. "Do you know how to drive?" "No," I panted, "but I'll figure it out." The horde swarmed outside, shadows pounding, glass rattling, claws screeching down metal. I twisted the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, died. The creatures shrieked, battering harder. I twisted again. This time the engine roared to life. The bus lurched forward, tires grinding over weeds. Creatures clung to the windows, smashing glass, reaching inside. I swerved, slamming into cages, scraping bodies off the sides. Something massive crashed into the roof, claws tearing metal. I floored the gas, swerving, slamming it into a tree. The roof caved, the shape fell, screeching. Jenna screamed as one of the monkey things clambered through a window. I swung the crowbar, breaking its neck, tossing it back out into the swarm. The gate loomed ahead, wide open. We roared through it, tires shrieking, leaving the zoo behind. The horde chased us down the road, dozens of them sprinting on all fours, some flying, some bounding like shadows. But the bus was faster. We sped down the highway, away from the gates, away from the laughter, away from the hunger. Jenna sobbed beside me, clutching her ankle. I kept driving, didn't look back, couldn't, because I knew if I did, I'd see them still running. And part of me knew they always would. The tower gave way like it had been waiting for years. Stone cracked, iron screamed, glass shattered. The floor dropped beneath us in a deafening roar. I grabbed the railing, but it came off in my hand. Emma's scream cut through everything. For one heartbeat, the world slowed. Dust, hanging in the air, wide eyes, mouths open. Then gravity took us. We tumbled down into the black throat of the tower. The last thing I saw before I hit the ground was a face in the dust. Not a person. A mask of bone-white skin and hollow eyes. Smiling. I woke, coughing blood. We weren't in the zoo anymore. Not the public part. We had fallen into something beneath it. A tunnel. Wide, damp walls lined with stone older than the city itself. My first thought, sewers. But the carvings on the walls told a different story. Not pipes, symbols. Those same claw-like marks. Circles within circles. A script that twisted if you stared too long. And beneath it all, shapes. Scratches of animals with too many teeth, too many eyes. Things that should never have existed. Emma was beside me, blood running down her cheek. A few others moaned nearby. Half the group didn't move at all. Above, the hole we fell through was gone. Not collapsed, sealed, like it had never been there. We weren't alone in the tunnels. We heard them first, the dragging footsteps, the breathless chanting. Then the lights came. Torches swaying, carried by figures cloaked in hides. They weren't counselors. They weren't teachers. They weren't even fully human. Their limbs bent wrong. Their jaws stretched too far. Their eyes glowed like wet stone, and in their hands they carried leashes. The leashes strained, holding back things with fur and bone and hunger. Wolves that weren't wolves. Cats that weren't cats. Twisted zoo creatures that had been remade. The procession stopped in front of us. One stepped forward. His hood fell back and I saw his face. It was Cal, the same counselor from the cabin retreat. But he looked older, his teeth too sharp, his skin cracked like bark. "The woods," he rasped, voice echoing. "The field, the stone, they are one. You should not have come." We were dragged deeper into the tunnels, through chambers filled with bones stacked like firewood, through halls painted with blood, names and dates scrawled across stone. Some names were familiar: students, teachers, dates going back decades, field trips that had gone wrong, but not accidents, not tragedies, sacrifices. We were taken to a chamber where a pit yawned in the center, black, bottomless, breathing like a throat. The cloaked figures circled it, chanting in a language that scraped against my ears. The animals strained at their leashes, snapping teeth frothing. Emma gripped my hand so hard her nails drew blood. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, but the truth pressed in heavy and sharp. It wouldn't. Cal stood over us. "You were chosen," he said. "The woods whispered your names, the stone carved your path, the animals smelled your fear." He looked down at us like meat. "Only one walks free." The figures behind him hissed approval. The creatures snarled. Emma's breath caught. What do you mean?" Cal smiled. His teeth were wrong. "One must feed the pit. The rest will follow. Only one walks free." The ground trembled beneath us. The pit pulsed like a heart. And I understood. They wanted us to choose, to turn on each other, to decide who would be thrown in. That was the game. The group cracked fast. One kid shoved another down. Someone screamed. Someone else grabbed a rock. Panic spread like fire. The cloaked things didn't move to stop it. They just watched, enjoyed it. I saw Emma pressed against the wall, shaking. Saw another boy, Liam, grab her wrist, shoving her toward the pit. I didn't think. I swung. The rock connected with Liam's skull. He dropped. For a second, silence. Everyone staring. Then the creatures roared. The cloaked things hissed. The pit exhaled, and Liam's body was pulled across the floor, invisible hands dragging him into the black. His scream echoed until it didn't. That was the crack in their ritual. The moment chaos turned against them. I pulled Emma and we ran. Through a side passage, torches spilling shadows. Through tunnels where bones crunched beneath our shoes. The chants followed, the snarls of creatures, the scraping of claws on stone. We didn't look back. We just ran. The tunnels twisted, turned, doubled back. Until finally, we saw it. Light, faint but real. A grate, rusted, old, leading up into night air. We clawed at it, pulled until nails bent and skin tore. It gave way with a scream of metal, and we crawled out into the zoo parking lot. Empty, silent. The bus is gone. The ending that isn't. We stumbled to the road, broken and bleeding. A car slowed, brakes squealed. The driver jumped out, phone already in hand. "Oh my God, what happened to you kids?" we told him. "Everything. The zoo, the creatures, the tunnels, the pit." He listened, nodding, his eyes soft. Then he smiled. Not kind, not human. Teeth too sharp. "The woods, remember," he whispered. And in the rear-view mirror, I saw them. Figures, cloaked, standing at the edge of the trees, waiting. Coda. We were found. We were taken home. Parents cried, teachers resigned, the news ran their stories. Zoo accident, structural collapse, tragic losses. That's what they called it. But sometimes at night I hear it. The scratching. 3 lines across my bedroom wall, and the whisper just loud enough to make my blood run cold. Only one walks free. On the back, in handwriting not hers, were the words, "Final offering, the museum." Sometime in the dark hours, the museum woke. The taxidermy animals stepped down from their pedestals, joints creaking, glass eyes glowing, skeletons clattered, jaws opening and closing. And the dioramas, God, the dioramas moved. A jungle scene rustled with real leaves. Shadows slithered through the underbrush. An Arctic display filled with snow that drifted out into the hall. And in the Egyptian wing, a sarcophagus lid slid open. Dust spilled, fingers curled over the edge. The staff bowed their heads as the exhibits marched past. A procession of bone and fur and history remade. The teachers fell to their knees. And we ran. The hidden door. In the chaos, Emma spotted it. A door behind the mural of the pit. Old, wooden, marked with the 3 lines. We pushed through, the hinges screaming. A staircase spiraled down into the belly of the museum, down where no tours went, down where the air tasted like iron and ash. We had no choice. We went. The bus was gone. No one had driven it away. No one had stolen it. One moment it had been sitting there, dented, smeared with grime and fingerprints, and the half-smeared blood of those who had once clawed at the windows in desperation. And the next, it was just gone. The parking lot was an empty slab of cracked asphalt under a sky that didn't look like any sky had the right to look. It was bruised, a mottled purple-green expanse that seemed to shift when you blinked, as if the heavens themselves were unspooling into something raw, something unfinished. Where is it?" whispered Chelsea. Her voice was shredded, all the bravado long gone. It was just here. We all saw it. Terrian knew better than to answer. Sometimes, when things slipped far enough out of joint, explanations only made the fracture spread wider. He licked his cracked lips, tasted iron. His tongue came away flecked red. "Gone," said Miguel. He was trembling, fists balled tight enough that his nails drew blood. "It's like it never existed, like it was part of..." He trailed off, staring at the tree line. The trees leaned closer, not metaphorically, not poetically. They physically tilted toward the survivors, branches creaking and cracking, leaves shivering without any wind to stir them. The forest wanted them. Terrian could hear it now. A whispering, low and intimate, not like the guttural croaks of the things that had chased them through the zoo, nor the echoing screams of the tower. This was subtler, slicker, like voices whispered just beneath the skin. "Come back. Come deeper." "Fuck," Miguel muttered, his breath coming ragged. "It's calling us." Terrian wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat, bubbling into something like a sob. He thought of the old stories. Children lured by candy houses, sailors beckoned to rocks by sirens. Those tales had always been metaphors, warnings about greed or lust or hunger. But what if they were just memories, echoes of something ancient that had never left? Chelsea broke first. "I'm not staying here," she said, voice sharp, brittle. I'm not going into that forest. I don't care if we die out here, I'm not..." But her words faltered, because the ground itself shifted under her. Asphalt buckled like flesh under a hot iron, softening, sagging. She staggered back with a scream as a sinkhole yawned open where her feet had been. Not deep, not yet. Just a warning. Stay still, or be swallowed. Terrian's chest burned with panic, but he forced himself to speak. "We can't just stand here. It's forcing us." Miguel's laugh was high and manic. "Oh, so we play along? That's the grand plan? Just keep walking into the fucking nightmare until it eats us alive?" "Yes," Terrian whispered. He didn't know where the certainty came from, only that it was true. That's the only way. They went into the forest. The trees seemed to breathe, the bark flexing as if lungs pushed underneath. Moss pulsed wetly, alive in a way moss had no right to be. And everywhere, those whispers. Louder now, a constant susurration just at the edge of language. Chelsea clutched Terrian's sleeve like a child. They're talking about us, she whispered. I can't understand it, but I know they're talking about us. Miguel kicked a root hard enough to split his toe through his sneaker. He didn't even flinch. Let them talk, let them say our names. If it means anything, it means they know we're here. The air was thick, swampy, but it wasn't just humidity. It was intention, as if the forest itself leaned closer, the way a predator does when deciding whether to pounce. And then, ahead, the trail opened. It wasn't a clearing, not exactly. It was more like a wound in the world. Trees pulled back to reveal a circle of bare, blackened earth, as if fire had once scorched it. But no ash remained, no charred stumps, just a raw emptiness. At the center stood a structure, not a building, not a monument, something in between. It was tall, spindly, almost skeletal, like someone had lashed together bones and driftwood into the shape of a tower. Symbols spiraled across it, cut deep, some still dripping fresh sap or blood. It pulsed faintly, like a living organ. Chelsea sobbed. No more towers, please, no more towers. Terrian couldn't speak. His throat had sealed shut. Because he recognized it. Not from memory, but from a place deeper. A place that had been hiding in his blood since the first time his mother had taken him to a school trip. Since the first time he had felt that uncanny wrongness of being watched when no one was there. This wasn't the first field trip. Not for him. Not for any of them. This was where they all ended. The whispers crescendoed as they stepped closer. Words bent into shape. You came. You always come. Terrian staggered. Do you hear it? Miguel nodded, eyes wide and feverish. Yeah, I hear it. And you know what? I'm done running. Before Terrian or Chelsea could stop him, Miguel strode forward into the clearing, arms spread. He looked tiny against the skeletal spire, but his voice rang out steady. Is this what you wanted? Huh? You've been dragging us, chasing us, eating us, but you never finish. Why? Why keep us alive this long? Why play games? The spire pulsed brighter. Terrian felt his guts twist. He knew with absolute certainty that Miguel had just signed his own death warrant. The ground beneath Miguel shuddered, split. Hands burst upward, too many fingers, too many joints bending wrong, and they dragged him down. He screamed once, short and sharp, then his voice gurgled into silence. Chelsea clapped her hands over her ears and fell to her knees. No. Terrian forced himself forward. Every step was agony, like wading into boiling tar, but he had to see. He had to know. Miguel was gone. Not devoured, not ripped apart. Just gone. The earth had closed around him, smooth and whole, as if he had never existed. Terrian's mind reeled. That was worse than death. Death meant something had been here. But this was erasure. Chelsea looked up at him, face streaked with tears. We're next, Terrian. No, he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince. Not if we end it. Not if we end them. The spire pulsed again, harder, faster, like a heartbeat racing, like something waking up. They had no weapons, no plan, just two battered bodies and the scraps of courage left after everything else had been stripped away. But maybe that was all it took. Terrian grabbed Chelsea's hand. Run with me. Where? Straight at it. She stared at him like he was insane. Maybe he was. But after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. They ran. The clearing warped around them, stretching, pulling away like an optical illusion. The spire loomed closer, and yet stayed the same distance, like it was mocking them. But Terrian didn't stop. He pumped his legs until his muscles screamed, dragging Chelsea with him. The whispers rose into shrieks. Don't. But they broke through. One moment the spire was impossibly far. The next their palms slapped against its surface. It was warm, pulsing, beating, alive. Chelsea screamed, not in fear but fury, and slammed her fists against it. You don't get to take us. You don't get to erase us. Terrian joined her. He clawed, punched, tore at the pulsing surface. Sap or blood splattered across their skin, hot and sticky. The spire groaned, a sound like a million insects crying at once. And then The world split open. No clean crack, no tidy collapse. It ruptured with a wet, tearing sound, like skin giving way under a scalpel. Light gushed out, not white, not golden, but a raw, blistering spectrum that burned Terrian's eyes just to glimpse it. He felt the color inside his skull, scraping along the folds of his brain like fingernails dragged across glass. Chelsea screamed, but she didn't stop hitting the thing. Her fists were bloodied, her knuckles raw, yet she struck harder, faster. "Die! Just die!" the spire answered. It swelled, ballooning grotesquely, ribs of wood and bone snapping outward. Shards rained around them, each piece writhing, twitching like severed insects. The whispers became a roar. "You do not kill us. You are us." Terrian staggered, his vision tunneling. Images stabbed through his mind, snapshots of every field trip horror. The abandoned slaughterhouse, the zoo, the tower. All the kids who'd vanished, whose names had slipped from memory like smoke. It was all the same place. Different masks, different games, but always the same trap. And he finally understood. The trips had never been about education. They weren't even about fear. They were about feeding, not on flesh. Flesh was incidental. They fed on memory, on erasure, on the quiet, forgotten vanishings that no one ever questioned too hard. Chelsea clawed at his sleeve, her face a mask of blood and terror. "We can't win. Terrian, we can't." But he knew they had no choice. Winning wasn't the point. Fighting was. Resisting. If they gave up, they'd dissolve into nothing, like Miguel, like all the others. But if they struck back, if they scarred the thing even once, maybe something of them would remain. "Help me," Terrian rasped. Together they threw themselves against the wound in the spire. They plunged their arms inside. It was like shoving their hands into boiling water. The heat seared down to the bone, cooking muscle and marrow. But they didn't stop. They pulled, tore, and the spire screamed. The sound wasn't in their ears. It was in their blood, their teeth, their very cells. The forest writhed, trees convulsing, bark splitting into mouths that shrieked in unison. The sky ripped open, purple-green clouds swirling into a vast, hungry eye that blinked once, twice, and fixed on them. Enough. Chelsea collapsed. Her body went slack, smoke curling from her lips. She was alive, but barely. Terrian, blind with pain, kept pulling. He tore something loose, a core, a knot of pulsing light, heavy and slippery in his hands. It fought him, every inch trying to squirm back into the wound. But he held on, screaming, his throat shredding. The spire convulsed, the clearing imploded, and then silence. Terrian opened his eyes. He was back on the bus. Kids chattered all around him, laughing, swapping snacks. The sun was bright, cheerful, normal. The teacher stood at the front, counting heads with a clipboard. For one gut-twisting second, he thought it had all been a dream. Then he looked down at his hands, burned, charred, still clutching the core. No one else saw it. The other kids passed candy bars, shared sodas, oblivious. The teacher smiled at him like nothing was wrong, but the core pulsed in his palms, faintly, desperately alive. Chelsea sat beside him, alive, unharmed, but her eyes were wrong, too wide, too bright. She leaned close and whispered, "You stole its heart." Terrian shuddered. "Did we kill it?" Her smile was too sharp, too knowing. "No, you just made it hungry." The bus lurched forward. Outside the window, the world looked normal, but only on the surface. Shadows lingered too long. Trees leaned just a fraction closer than they should. The trip wasn't over. It would never be over. The bus rolled on, carrying 30 kids toward a destination none of them had chosen. The teacher's voice droned about rules, about safety, about sticking together. But Terrian knew better. Field trips were never about learning. They were about feeding. And somewhere in his lap, warm and pulsing, the core beat faster, as if laughing. Epilogue. The headline barely registered on the back page of the local paper 2 weeks later. 4 students reported missing during class outing. Search continues. Parents wept. Teachers resigned. A few protests flared, but soon enough life moved on. The names of the missing faded, replaced by new headlines. new concerns. The core pulsed faintly in the dark of Terrian's closet, unseen. And somewhere out there, the spire rebuilt itself, taller, stronger, hungrier, waiting for the next bus, waiting for the next trip. Because some lessons are never forgotten, and some trips never end. The flyer showed a T-Rex, a big smiling cartoon version with teeth like white picket fences. Natural History Museum overnight lock-in, it read in bubble letters. Explore the past, learn after dark. Our principal handed them out like golden tickets. This will be the highlight of your year, she said, her smile stiff. A rare opportunity. Rare opportunity, my ass. I wasn't excited. Museums at night sounded like boredom turned up to 11, staring at bones and rocks and dead animals in glass cases, while teachers hovered nearby. But for parents, it was irresistible. An educational sleepover, a safe adventure. So, of course, everyone signed up. And of course, I went too. The bus ride by now, we should have known better. First the cabin retreat, then the zoo. Field trips weren't safe. Field trips didn't end right. But those memories were like dreams. Fuzzy, rewritten. The news reports called them accidents. Teachers resigned, parents whispered, and life trudged on. It was easier to believe the official story than to cling to nightmares. Still, when the bus pulled away from the school parking lot, I had a knot in my stomach. We drove through the city, the streets narrowing, the buildings older. Finally, we turned down an avenue lined with gargoyles perched on ledges. Their stone eyes watched us pass, and there it was. The museum. It loomed like a fortress, 3 stories of grey stone, windows like empty sockets. Massive doors opened into a lobby with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Banners hung down advertising the exhibits: Animals of the World, Ancient Civilizations, the Age of Dinosaurs. In the center of the lobby stood a skeleton, not a T-Rex like the flyer promised. Something smaller, leaner. Its skull was narrow, its claws long, and scratched into the base of its display, faint, almost hidden, were 3 parallel lines, the same mark I'd seen before. Orientation. The museum staff greeted us in matching polos, smiling too wide. Their badges had the same clawed symbol. They explained the rules. Stay with your groups, no running. Lights out at midnight. Their voices echoed through the vast halls, bouncing off glass and stone. As they talked, I caught movement in the shadows above, on the balconies that circled the lobby. But when I blinked, they were gone. First tour. We split into groups and followed staff through the exhibits. The Animals of the World Hall was filled with taxidermy. Lions, wolves, bears, all frozen mid-roar. Glass eyes gleamed under dim lights. One girl swore she saw a wolf's chest rise and fall, like it was breathing. The staff chuckled. Optical illusion, they said. But I didn't laugh, because when we moved on, I heard it. A low growl. Next was Ancient Civilizations. Statues lined the walls, faces eroded by time, hands missing, eyes gouged out, but the symbols were still sharp. Circles, spirals, 3 parallel lines. A mural showed a pit surrounded by figures, arms raised, animals at their sides. I felt sick. I'd seen that pit. I knew what it wanted. Finally, the age of dinosaurs. Skeletons towered overhead, ribs like cages, jaws open in eternal hunger. One skeleton had too many teeth. Another had eye sockets that didn't fit any known animal. Our guide spoke about evolution, about life and death. But her voice wavered, like she was reciting something older than science. Something rehearsed, something believed. Dinner in the halls. We ate boxed sandwiches in the Hall of Mammals. Imagine sitting cross-legged on the floor while stuffed predators loomed above you, teeth bared. The teachers tried to lighten the mood. "Isn't this fun?" they said. No one answered, because one of the animals was missing. A wolf display. Its case stood open, glass shattered, plaque cracked. When we asked, the staff said it had been removed for restoration. But the air smelled like wet fur, and when the lights flickered, I saw glowing eyes in the shadows between cases. Lights out. At midnight, They herded us into the hall of dinosaurs with our sleeping bags. The skeletons loomed above, jaws sharp against the moonlight streaming through skylights. The staff wished us good night, their smiles tight. Then the doors locked. The echo of the bolt sliding home was louder than it should have been. We lay in our bags, whispers echoing, kids trying to joke but failing. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and somewhere, glass cracked. The first movement. I wasn't asleep when it happened. The skeleton shifted. So at first, just the tail, a faint rattle like bones settling, then a foot, talons scraping against the platform. I held my breath, staring. The skull turned. Empty sockets locked on me. I closed my eyes, praying I was dreaming. When I opened them, the skeleton hadn't moved, but its shadow had. And it leaned down close. Around 2 a.m. I woke to a voice, not out loud, inside my skull. Only one walks free. The same words, the same cadence. I sat up, heart pounding. Emma was awake too, her eyes wide, staring at the ceiling. "What did you hear?" I whispered. She didn't answer, but I saw it in her face. She'd heard the same thing. When morning didn't come, we knew something was wrong. The skylights above the dinosaur hall should have let in dawn, but the sky outside was still black. A thick, tar-like darkness pressed against the glass. Time wasn't moving. The teachers gathered us, trying to soothe the panic, but their voices trembled. And then we noticed. One sleeping bag was empty. Zach. He'd been lying 3 feet from me. His bag was still zipped, still shaped like a body. But when we touched it, just pillows. No one had seen him leave. No one heard him go. But he was gone. The staff didn't even look surprised. The sealed doors. We tried the doors. They didn't budge. Handles twisted but didn't turn. Locks clicked without keys. Even when a few kids slammed their shoulders against the wood, it was like ramming stone. The staff finally admitted it. The museum locks differently during an overnight. Their smiles stretched too wide. We weren't locked in. We were sealed. The shifting exhibits. When we explored, things weren't where they had been. In Animals of the World, the lion had changed positions. It no longer stood mid-roar. Now it crouched low, ready to spring. The bear's head turned toward the path, glass eyes gleaming with hunger. And in the corner, the empty wolf case had been filled again. But the creature inside wasn't a wolf. It had the shape of one, sure, but the muzzle was too long, the teeth too many, the eyes too human. Its plaque didn't say grey wolf anymore. It said, "Remember, teachers and staff." We begged the teachers to help us get out. Mr. Rawlins, our history teacher, snapped, "There's no way out." His voice cracked like stone splitting. When he turned, I saw his eyes. Not brown anymore, not even human. Grey, polished like marble. The staff didn't comfort us. They watched. They whispered to each other in a language older than words. One brushed past me, her hand grazing my arm. Her nails left 3 burning welts, 3 parallel lines. The hall of civilizations. By evening, if it was evening, we were herded into the ancient civilizations wing. The murals had changed, no longer depictions of temples and hunting scenes. Now they showed us children in uniforms, sleeping bags in a hall of bones, teachers standing above them, faces cracked and hollow. At the center of each mural a pit, always a pit, and carved above it, only one walks free. The group cracked. One boy bolted, sprinting through the halls. His sneakers echoed off marble, fading fast. A second later, silence. Then a scream. We ran toward it, but when we reached the Hall of Dinosaurs, the floor was slick with blood. It trailed into the shadows beneath a skeleton's ribcage. We never saw him again. Emma's revelation. That night, Emma pulled me aside. "They're connected," she whispered. Her voice shook, but her eyes burned. The retreat, the zoo, and now this. They're not accidents. They're rituals. She pulled out something from her pocket, a folded paper, faded, stained. I recognized it instantly. The flyer for the cabin retreat.